now look, if someone's
We're
giving
live. What was that now?
Oh no, the friend of mine who was Sicilian was telling me that like when people would give him a hard time, what he used to say to people was, "Now look at me, I'm Sicilian. I'm not saying I know people, but I'm not saying I don't. But do you want to take a chance?"
Unfortunately, I've told the story about how I have no mob connections despite Sicilian relatives so many times. I can't get away with that unless I'm a complete stranger to someone.
Yeah. There you go, for being honest, you know.
Yeah. If we're lucky, we might get a pop by from Tommy from the Bronx tonight, and he can pretend to be Sicilian. You know,
it's been a while.
It has been a while. Well, he was in the audience, I think, last week for a little while. But I think on these Jamborees, he's only been on screen once, way back in the early weeks, and that was only for a little while as well. Yeah, but I hope he comes on, as Tommy's always amusing, and you know, he has a lot of opinions which are different to mine and probably most of yours, and that always makes for stimulating discussion, as far as I'm concerned. Hello there, viewers. I see we have 3 people watching live at the moment. Please feel free to let us know who you are in the comment section on the side there. And if there's any questions you'd like to ask to open up the discussion, feel free to do that as well. Because, yeah, we were just sort of shooting the breeze before going live. But has anybody got any topic they'd like to bring up for discussion?
Stormtroopers in
Portland.
Yeah, stormtroopers in Portland. That's one. Another one was Marco Rubio mistaking Elijah Cummings for John Lewis.
God, not even really.
Yeah. He tweeted about what an honor it was to have worked with John Lewis and blah blah blah, and knowing him and meeting him. And he tweeted a picture of himself with Elijah Cummings.
They all look alike, Paul.
Apparently we do.
What, Republicans? I mean, Jesus.
Now, okay, to be fair, I've been sort of busy the last couple of days because I got a Nintendo Switch, so I haven't been paying attention, but I've been hearing things about, like, peripherally about the thing going on in Portland, but I don't have full context. So if we're going to talk about that, someone's going to have to start at the beginning and catch me up.
Federal officers wearing camouflage and tags that only say police with no identifying markers on them or anything in unmarked rented cars have been jumping out of their cars and scooping people up off the street and taking them away to undisclosed locations.
Stasi style.
So when you said stormtroopers, you didn't mean the fun kind.
Not the fun kind, no. These ones can probably hit stuff with their weapons too.
Don't get me started.
The same group of people last week, 4 or 5 days ago, I suppose now, shot a protester from across the street with a non-lethal bullet in the head, and he's having facial reconstructive surgery. I mean, when they shot the guy, you saw this big splash of blood, and he hit the deck, obviously, immediately. They were supposed to be guarding a federal building or whatever. The protester was across the street from the building. He was not in any sort of threatening posture as regards his proximity to the building. And he's literally just holding up like a speaker, you know, a boombox type speaker, like more like a Bluetooth speaker these days, right? But anyway. So
we're talking a scene out of Say Anything here.
Huh?
We're talking a scene out of Say Anything here.
Kind of in the way he was holding up the box. Yeah, just like that. And the cop just, and you know, I mean, anybody who's ever held a firearm knows that if you're going to get a headshot, you had to aim. A headshot isn't a lucky shot, you know? So that guy took aim at the guy's head from across the street, and a rubber bullet or whatever you want to call those things is still going to be extremely painful, if not lethal, from across the street. I mean, those, you know, something coming 300 miles an hour is going to hurt, even if it's dust, you know what I mean? A packet of dust. So I got no words for that. So these people are basically doing open fascism on the streets of Oregon right now. And that's not even an exaggeration.
It doesn't even make sense in a place like Portland. I mean, Portland is like hippie granola central.
Right. Well, that's what
kind of, but there's also, you remember like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, there was those guys that took over that government building not far from Portland because they had some land dispute with the government or blah, blah, blah. And one of their guys got arrest. I can't even remember the whole details, but they took over a government building with guns for like a couple of months, as I recall.
Yeah, but here's the difference, Paul. The people that are being scooped up off the street, these stormtroopers would have no problem with the guys that took over the federal building.
Yeah.
They would let them. They would be okay with that because it's their kind of people.
Yeah. The thing that's really distressing to me is I keep seeing, there's always some right-wing douchebags that want to like make, basically say it's what's happening is okay. And this one person there, what they tried to show as a justification, they pointed out that some police officer was shot and killed somewhere in the country. And I'm like, well, unless you're saying the people that were being snapped up were the ones that were accused of the murder, then this is just sea lining. It's like, well, something bad happened to a cop, so therefore, the federal agents can act like Gestapo and just take
protesters are all suspects basically. If you're a
basically, yeah,
suspect is basically what it boils down to, and this is obviously untenable, unconstitutional, and completely illegal. And what I want to know is, are the civilian police in Portland empowered to arrest these people for conducting illegal arrests? Because that's what they're doing. It's right there in the Constitution. You can't arrest someone without having probable cause that they've committed a crime, reading them their rights, etc., etc., etc. There's a whole system of due process that's hundreds of years in the fucking baking, that has sustained our civil society for an awfully long time. Rules that exist for a reason. And the cops are charged with keeping those rules in place. Why aren't the cops arresting these guys with guns? Oh, wait, I figured it out.
Well, here's my question.
There would be a war. That's why.
I need context on this one. We 100% certain they're really cops? I mean, if they have no ID, if they're in rented
No, they're not cops.
They're not cops.
They're working for the federal government. First they said, oh, it's the Customs and Border Patrol. And then they said, it's human services or some shit like that.
They were Border Patrol agents that were deployed by the Department of Homeland Security.
So
Homeland Security, okay.
Part of the government then. That was my real question.
Which technically speaking, then DHS doesn't really have the only jurisdiction they would have, like border agents, would really only be if somebody was violating, either violating the border somehow or smuggling and stuff like that. But they wouldn't really have any jurisdiction. So they're basically, Paul, you're right. These are illegal detentions.
Right. And it's an illegal deployment of federal officers. The people in Oregon did not ask for these people, and they've asked for them to leave. On both, there's no excuse to keep them there any longer.
That sounds more like the Portland I know.
Yeah,
The governor of Oregon today was like, get them the fuck out of Portland.
As was the mayor of Portland. The mayor of Portland's like, fuck off. They had just started to get a lid on the situation, and then these heavies come in from the feds and start fucking shit up and being all heavy-handed on purpose. They're trying to provoke a reaction. Agent provocateurs are as old as time, right? It's just, it's gone on forever, and it couldn't be more obvious that they're trying to provoke a response. Kazum, it's good to see you. It's been a while. How you doing?
Yeah, doing all right. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you. I have no doubt that you have your opinions about what's going on in Portland. That's proximity to where you've probably been through Portland a number of times yourself, I'm sure, being a West Coast guy. What do you think about what's going to be going on? You are free to voice your opinion on this channel.
Well, I don't have enough information to really form a good opinion on that. I mean, I know that out of footage that I've seen, there's been a lot of this hasn't been just peaceful protesters. There's people that are rioting, and we can't treat rioters the same as we do peaceful protesters. So, I mean, a lot of these cities where these riots have been happening, the city hasn't done much about it.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. I got to jump in here. Here's the problem. Most of the damage and a lot of the riots have been perpetrated by the very same people who are wearing uniforms. So, I mean,
those big pallets of bricks were conveniently there at the riot locations.
Right. I mean, these cities aren't like these, pits of lawlessness where there's crazy people running around destroying everything. A lot of this stuff was staged. The police department in Seattle, where the police 3 or 4 days before the Chaz happened, they abandoned that police department on purpose days before. The police department in Minneapolis was set by a white guy who was connected to the police. A lot of the storefronts in Minneapolis were destroyed by cops from St. Paul. A lot of what the news is showing us, these riots, it's actually being done by the police to justify their military-like reaction.
That and alt-right sympathizers too.
Yeah, and alt-right sympathizers.
And my thing is, okay, just pretend for sake of argument that the people that are getting snatched up were doing something illegal. They still have constitutional rights. So, right. And the thing is, I was watching Bo, the Fifth Column, yesterday talking about it, and he was making the point that they're snatching these people up, and the people who know their rights, they demand a lawyer and then are getting released almost immediately because it's an illegal detention. So if they ask for a lawyer and they don't get one, eventually they will, and then that so that's why they're letting them go right away, because they don't want to have it be a court case.
Yeah, apparently they were letting them go as soon as the person who was arrested invoked their constitutional rights. They got let go. Real police won't do that.
Right.
If you were arrested by an actual police officer, they would have already read you your rights and said, sorry, tell it to the judge, bub, you're going to go down and get processed.
I want to address Curious one real quick.
Portland, you are speed on, so I'll just give you the Cliff's Notes version because we've already mentioned it earlier. But so unmarked cars detaining people but with police officers who only say police on their camouflage uniforms. They're coming with riot gear on, with camouflage, like soldiers, not like police. One word, police. No name, no badge, no identification as to what organization these people are working for. Snatching off the street, shuffling into vans and cars, and taking them away to undisclosed locations where they will later be either detained or let go, depending on whether or not they invoke their constitutional rights.
Okay,
I don't see any circumstance, even in the case of a city on fire. I don't see any circumstance in which it's okay to snatch people up off the street without any kind of due process, without any kind of identification, without any kind of. We have had these systems in place for a long ass time because they work and because they guarantee your rights. When you take the systems away, you take the rights away.
So I have to
that's
say,
fair.
Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
To what I'm seeing in the chat there, I have to say, Chaz had not a damn thing to do whatsoever with Trump. Chaz had as much to do with Trump as Colin Kaepernick did kneeling to disrespecting the troops. Okay, they're that disconnected. I mean, seeing someone who was in Seattle for 20 years, who has friends who were part of Chaz, I know what was going on there, and it had nothing to do with Trump. Just saying.
Fair comment. By the way, hello, Curious, and hello, Lucas. I see you both in the chat. Thanks for joining us. And everybody else who's out there watching, if you want to say hi in the chat, please do.
All right. So
conversation. Yeah, Rob, go on.
About 3 or 4 days before Chaz was a thing, the police abandoned that police station. And on their way out, on the news, on live TV, they said, this will probably be in flames before the weekend is over. And it never happened. The police left hoping that the crowd would destroy the place, and it never happened. And then what happened after that? Once their prediction failed to come true, they started pumping out false information about people with machine guns and illegal checkpoints. No, Curious.
Wait. I thought I've seen footage of the people with those kind of guns and of the checkpoints.
There was one dude with a gun.
One guy wanted to set himself up as like the de facto emperor of Chaz, and it did not work out.
It did not work out for him at all. No, it was one dude. I mean,
you're talking about Raz?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was not in charge the way he wanted people to think he was, like not by a long shot. In fact, again, most of my Seattle friends were like, screw that guy. So
But
Yeah.
well, and that's the thing. I mean, that's one thing. One thing anyone in this country should know about the far left is that they're definitely not big around getting behind, a single person and having blind loyalty and all that. So,
these cats won't be herded.
mm,
And there were 6 shootings by people who weren't part of Chaz. The shootings were people who wanted to stir shit up at Chaz. They were outsiders.
And this is America. 6 shootings is a good day.
Well, still though, the 6 shootings did show, what can happen when there's no order.
But law enforcement left on purpose. That's the point. They created an environment and invited lawlessness.
And it was outsiders causing the lawlessness. If people just left alone.
But Chaz wanted there to be no police. They demanded there be no police. They demanded an autonomous zone.
No, the police left before there was an autonomous zone. The police left. They packed up and left.
Kazum is right. Kazum is right, though. They did make those demands. They did say, stay the fuck away. They did.
Yeah.
That is true. But on the other hand, though, again, if someone brings up the shootings at Chaz as a reason to say that the people who were part of Chaz, the ones who were in support of it, were the violent ones, they're wrong. Like it may be that it was a failed experiment to have no police there, but it wasn't the people in Chaz causing the violence.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's basically like a blame the victim thing. It's like, well, hey, people attacked you, so therefore you're bad. And the thing is that the police abandoning, it's the same kind of shit that happened in New York City, or very similar to what happened in New York City when stop and frisk was rescinded. Because basically the cops were like, well, if that's the case, if we can't, roll up on somebody and violate their rights for no particular reason, then we're just not going to do our job. And so they basically were holding off on detentions and stopping people because they were hoping that crime would spike. But you know what happened? It didn't. And so after a couple of weeks, when chaos didn't ensue, they were like, holy shit, we got to get back to work, because if people realize that they don't need so many of us, they will make that happen for real. So,
I agree with that. I just wanted to bring in that comment from Lucas a moment ago. He said that what's happening in Portland seems absolutely wrong, like an authoritarian government, say, for example, Russia or the Chinese would do, or any number of Latin American countries from the 70s. You know what I mean?
It's
disappeared in Chile and Argentina all the time.
They need to be read their rights. People need to have their rights. So that aspect of what's going on, I think is wrong. But at the same,
Sorry, go ahead. I just have to. If I talk over you, it'll fuck up the sound. But we've got cops for that. We don't need feds. The federales don't belong when they're not.
But they weren't doing very much.
Well, then that's
Should we just keep letting them riot and destroy things?
Well, yeah, but
should you violate people's rights instead?
I'm not saying. I already said that part of it is wrong. I'm just saying if the cities aren't doing it hardly anything about it and they're just letting this stuff continue, then something will get done about it a different way. I don't agree with taking away people's rights. No. But something needed to be done.
Wait. You say something needed to be done, but why isn't anything being done about the reason the riots were happening in the first place? I mean, because the riots were not just something that happened in a vacuum. They were sparked by the whole George Floyd situation. And if that were being dealt with, we'd be seeing a lot fewer riots.
Well, the other thing too is that what evidence is there, if any, that the particular people that they snatched up were actually the ones causing any kind of rioting? Because it's like I said, because that's the thing that I said. If there is actually people in the act of doing it, or there's evidence that they've done it that they've rioted or caused destruction in the past, and the cops roll up on them, sure. But the thing is, that's not been the case. Plus the fact that, like I said, when they have asserted their rights, they're let go. So that tells me if they were actually somebody who was breaking the law, they wouldn't get let go. They'd probably be turned over to the police and say, hey, we got this person. This is somebody you were looking for who rioted. That's not what they're doing.
it's not just that they're not being read their rights. These are officers who aren't wearing any kind of identification to identify what agency or what force they work for. They're not reading anybody their rights. They're not telling them why they're being detained. They're not using what would be considered like authorized type vehicles. They're using rent-a-cars. They are what they're doing is no different than kidnapping. They're just
It is kidnapping.
Yeah.
But it seems they're trying to instill fear in the people that they're
exactly.
That seems to be their goal.
Which is
Fear.
terrorism. That's domestic terrorism.
Right.
That's
Because that's the thing. Because the one thing the feds could do is they could send the DOJ could send the FBI in, and the FBI has procedures they have to follow. And so these are not the FBI. They're not following these people that are doing this have no jurisdiction where they're doing it. This is literally an illegal detention. This is literally kidnapping. So that's my thing. If the people that they're grabbing are actually doing something wrong, and if it's an issue that the feds are mad because the civilian government's not doing the right thing, the feds have legal means to do that, but they're not, which tells me that this is a tactic. This is a scare tactic. This is like the third world junta stuff.
What do you think about the argument that it's pure like security theater, that they don't actually this is all like set up just as an election stunt basically, and it's like basically some kind of flex for the election? But I worry, because if this is where we're at 100 days before the election, more or less. Suppose Trump wins, this is what it's going to be like for 4 more years.
Yeah. I mean,
let that marinate for a second. That's
what the hell were people thinking nominating Joe freaking Biden if they wanted to get rid of Trump?
Well, they did. So we got to live with that now. I mean, it literally. I understand the reasons why you don't like him, but
we are where we are. We are where we are.
Beyond mere don't like, though. It's not. It goes beyond just Joe Biden. Okay, because I still say that we see a cycle of Republicans jump, and then Democrats, baby steps, jump, baby steps, jump. And I'm wondering, like, when is this cycle going to fucking end? And we actually start seeing some movement in a more progressive direction. We're not going to get it from someone like Joe Biden. But if we elect Joe Biden and he turns out to be another milquetoast center-right Democrat in name only, and people are going to get sick of it, and they're going to go looking for someone else, just like they did with Trump last time around. It's never going to end until we tell the Democrats to knock it the fuck off and give us a real progressive.
A couple of things. The charter that Biden signed onto with Bernie and Bernie's peeps, if he signed on to it, saying that this is going to be his platform, he's taking these ideas on. If he holds true to that, it'll make him the most progressive candidate ever.
That's true. That's true.
Are we getting Medicare for all? Are we getting?
I don't know what the details are. I don't know what all the details of the charter.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing. Is that
if he lives up to the charter,
the details matter quite a bit. If we don't see UBI, student loan forgiveness, free college, livable wage,
you're not going to get everything you want, Kate.
I'm not saying everything. I'm saying anything. The stuff that I think are most important. Not one item. Joe Biden has said that some of them are not
one item. He just signed.
He signed some. Yeah, he signed something, particularly the environment. He even wants to start an environmental. What is it? Climate justice. He wants to have an office of climate justice in the Justice Department.
And how much of the Green New Deal does that get us?
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. Actually, Kate, if you were, I'm going to call you on this, Kate, because a couple of days ago I sent you the article that you obviously didn't read. That he's going to spend. That he's looking at $2 trillion over a four-year period. That is to me $2 trillion. That represents 20% of the budget.
To do what exactly?
For the environment.
Did you read it?
No, dude, you have to understand. Okay, people send me link after link after link after link within the space of an hour. I can't remember them all. I still have memory issues from the seizures. So get off your fucking high horse and give me some context.
See, this is the thing, Kate. This is one of my criticisms has been with you all the time, is that you kind of look at things superficially, and then
you don't know shit about me, bitch. Don't start.
Oh, come on, guys.
No,
Dial it back.
I'm sorry, but he's making it personal, and I'm not going to put up with that shit.
That's why I'm asking everybody to dial it back. That's exactly why I'm at.
So if he holds true to that charter, he will be the most progressive candidate we've ever had in the general. Obviously not ever, because in the primaries, Bernie is out progressive to all of them. But I mean, in the general, outside of Bernie in 2016, he'll be the most progressive candidate ever, which is good. It's a win, Kate. It might not be the win we want, but it's the win we're going to get.
But it's not a win. Okay, because it's not enough, and it's not enough of the right things. It'll be a win. It'll be a win when it's a trend, not when it's a band-aid.
Okay, well, it's a start. Well, it's a start. If nothing else, it's a start.
I don't see
we can call it a consolation prize.
How can the most
2.0?
How no? That's not what the platform is, Kate. Look at the platform.
Okay.
How can the most progressive candidate in our history?
Okay. You can't keep just saying those words as if they mean something, because
they only mean nothing to you because you refuse to look at it.
No, they only mean nothing to me.
Joe sent you the link.
You don't get to fucking tell me what I think or what I've done.
I don't have to. You already did. I don't have to. You already told us.
No, I didn't tell you a damn thing. Oh, I told you.
You did. Obama 2.0. It's not enough.
Fuck you, Deb. Seriously, you gotta get. I mean, seriously, you cannot make these accusations and then not shut the fuck up and let me say something about it.
I made no accusations.
Yes, you did. Every time yes, you did.
What accusation did I make?
You were telling me about all the things that I have or haven't done with regard to finding out about this stuff, and you don't know anything about me.
You told us. You told us.
No, what I told you is that I've been sent a lot of links in a very short span of time, and I can't remember all of them. Okay, I click on links, I read things, but I also forget things. It's a human thing that happens. Okay, so fuck off with this. You didn't actually read it, shit. And give me a little fucking context.
Did you read it?
I don't fucking remember, dumbass. I just said I don't remember. God.
Yeah, okay.
And there you go.
I mean, seriously. Oh, gee, do I remember that other link that other person sent me? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look to just have that one moment of, oh, right, that. Because that's happened many times. People have said... Did you read that? Yes or no? Yes or no? And I go looking, and I go, oh, I completely forgot about that. But yes, I did read it. But you're not willing to give me that level of benefit of the doubt, are you? You just want to right to me. You didn't read anything.
Okay, wait. So what are some of the things that were in that link? What are some of the things that were said in that link?
All right, let me pull it up.
God.
All correct.
I mean, maybe if you guys could keep this, oh, look how horrible you are shitting your pants, this wouldn't go off the rails.
This is insufferable as always.
And just stop making it so personal.
No, describing what you've said and done in my presence is not making it personal. If you don't like
you misconstrued everything and took it as badly as you possibly could. And made tons of unwarranted assumptions about it too. And then when I said that's not what happened, you went, yes, it is. As if you know better than I do what I've done.
Okay.
I mean, man, you guys are as bad as those theists I argue with who pull the same shit.
Oh, don't even start, Kate. Don't even fucking start. Let's move on to something.
You don't want me to start? You don't want me to start?
Yeah, I don't want you to start.
Well, too late.
All I know is whatever positions that Biden actually has, they're overshadowed by his seemingly cognitive decline.
That's true. Yeah, I don't trust him in office, frankly.
It seems that his running mate, his pick for running mate, is going to be more important this time around than we've had for a long time.
Well, just watch. He's going to pick some schmuck just like him, like Kamala Harris or something, some right of center, not actually a Democrat.
Speaking of his pick, I wish he would just fucking do it already. I am so sick of the guess who it's gonna be bullshit.
Me too.
It's been going on for 2 months now. It's like, oh my god, dude. You know, just
I think the benefit of him not having said anything is he has all these people basically auditioning by getting out there and saying nice things about Joe all the time. So he gets some free campaigning off Elizabeth, Kamala, Stacey Abrams, even. And even Val Demings to a smaller degree. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot more of them on TV lately. You know, I'm obviously trying to increase their own visibility and therefore their own desirability for this slot. That's how I read it anyway. I feel like everybody's like auditioning, going, hey, don't forget me. I'm saying nice things about you over here.
I think he's already picked. But as far as like the it's kind of like free campaign type stuff, yes, that I agree with. But I think he's already picked.
If he has already picked and he hasn't told us yet, then that's kind of outrageous, because it would have done his campaign a lot of good to have that information already.
Well,
Would it though necessarily? I mean,
I suppose it depends on who he picks, right?
Well, one of the things that I've been hearing about a lot lately is how Biden doesn't even really have to do much to win this election except let Trump run his mouth. Like Biden could bunker up for a while and just put out occasional commercials, and it would only help him. Like every time he's on stage and you see that cognitive decline, people start to go, I don't know. So, I mean, it's probably better to not mention until the general.
Well,
Do you think Biden will try to bow out of the debates?
No.
I don't think they'll let him. I don't think it's possible. I think if he starts saying, oh, but there's a pandemic going on, they'll say, we'll do it by remote. We'll set up a couple of webcams and you guys can debate by Skype. I don't know. They'll find a way to take away his excuses.
Yeah, the other thing too, one thing you gotta think about, Paul, too, as far as the timing of the release, is whoever he picks, there's going to be a buzz, you know, and most campaigns get a bounce when they do that. They're timing the bounce for as late as possible, as close to because basically most bounces don't last. You get a bounce and everyone goes yay, and then they stop caring because there's other things and it drops back down. So this is all about timing.
Well,
I don't think that Biden.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I don't think Biden's cognitive decline is as bad as people make it out. Yeah, there's some. But you got to remember, he is an old guy with a stutter, and he's always had a stutter, and it's always made him look like he didn't know what he was saying. So and then there were times, there's always been times where he didn't know what he was saying.
I mean,
so,
it's significantly worse than it was.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at footage of him from 10 years ago compared to now, and I mean, it's a night and day difference.
But it was always there to a degree.
Oh, it's
a little
it's
bit, yeah.
I mean, basically, the way I look at it, that's the reason why I think this time the vice president, whoever he picks for vice president, will be probably one of the most important vice presidential picks ever, because I don't think he's going to make it through his entire term. And I don't mean he's necessarily going to die, but I think he's either due to cognitive reasons or physical reasons, he probably won't be able to serve out his term.
I don't know. Reagan managed it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Reagan was in 78, though.
Yeah, but he was also senile as fuck. I mean, he was calling his wife Tommy, for crying out loud.
I think some of Reagan's stuff was fake. I do. I think some of Reagan's stuff was the stuff he couldn't remember, because I mean, it was just like it was all during the Iran-Contra scandal, and suddenly he couldn't remember giving orders. And so it's like,
Well, what got me about that, especially, is at the very beginning of the Iran-Contra thing, he actually went on TV and said it was an arms for hostage deal. I made a mistake. Then he never ever acknowledged any kind of culpability whatsoever after that point. But he said, I made a mistake. And then later on, we're like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And people just accepted that.
One of my issues with Biden is that he kind of seems kind of puppetish to me. He doesn't. I don't, because if he,
when they get to that level.
Are you saying there's a power behind the throne? Is that what you're saying?
I think he's pandering. I think he's going to pander to. I mean, already, even with some of the like the climate justice thing. You know, he's pandering to some elements that are relatively far left.
He has to.
Because he has to.
He has to.
See, I don't think that's what he's doing at all, frankly. I think that he is throwing little like inconsequential bones out there for some people, but he's not actually working for any kind of real substantial change of any sort in a left direction.
For instance, if he went for when it comes to police and how handling of police brutality, if he went via the what he did in his past, especially deep in his past, he would have people would say that he's like Trump, you know, but because he's in this position now, he's I don't know, he doesn't seem strong on any position, really. He seems like he's very, what's the word, pliable, malleable, what's the word I'm trying to find?
I hear what you're saying, Kazum. In my opinion, if it wasn't for the fact he had already been vice president, he wouldn't have stood a chance, right? Based on his resume. Because what you think about his resume is pretty fair. You know, back in the 90s, there's some stuff that really should appall any progressive of the 2020 generation. You know, go on.
No. I'm just saying,
she's just agreeing. Yes, her. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So I think those are fair criticisms of Joe Biden, but at the same time, we again, as we said at the beginning, and don't get me wrong, y'all, I actually think this is weak sauce, but it's the only sauce that isn't poison. The bottom line is Joe's what we've got to defeat Trump. And as much as I don't like that pill, I'm going to bite that bullet and vote for Joe Biden, because I believe that Joe Biden at least will pick a decent cabinet. And that matters a hell of a lot, especially considering the jackasses and jerks that we've had running the government for the past 3.5 years.
Here's how you hold
that is the worst in history.
Here's how you hold Joe Biden to the left. So like Kate and Kazum are concerned about him not really being left, and I agree. But there is a way to hold him there. And the way to pull him to the left and hold him there is to elect as many lefties and progressive to Congress as possible.
That didn't work with Obama. Obama had a supermajority, and he was still the compromiser in chief. So, no.
Well, I actually think another side that I don't necessarily think that he might not be progressive enough. I think he may end up pandering to some pretty extreme sides of the left, the sides that the right has been very scared of. He might be pandering to people that people would label as Marxist.
Well, and actually,
if I ever tell you that I'm a Marxist, assume just as a default that I mean Groucho.
Yeah.
There is no real extreme left in the United States. So,
well, I also want to point out that yes, Obama, at least the first 2 years of his term, had a House and Senate. But the thing is that there's a difference between, and I'm sure you well know, I would assume you well know, Kate, that there's a difference necessarily between progressive and Democrat. You know, I mean, I know.
Absolutely.
So the composition of the House in 2008 was not. It's not the Squad. It wasn't AOC. You know, it was a much more conservative, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't get a public option.
Well, go on, but I have something to say about that.
So, and look, that's not to say that, you know, I'm sure obviously there were some progressives there, but I'm talking about the party as a whole. What was in the House in 2008 was not. It's not some of the people that we have now. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, you ever see that scene in Life of Brian where Brian is trying to buy a beard to disguise his identity, and the dude is like, "This bloke won't haggle," right? Well, the problem is that Obama started out with the haggle, right? Where he could say, "Oh, we'll reach across the aisle and meet them in the middle," but they took his shoot for the moon to be not the compromise position. Like he said, we're going to start here where I think we should end up, rather than here's what I'm going to start asking for, and then you'll bargain me down to it.
I don't disagree with that.
Going too far right. And I mean, so that's the main reason why.
Right. But he wasn't getting any push from people, members of the House either. They were more than happy to let him slide to the right, because they were worried about their re-elections, because at the time, again, where the country was at the time. So.
The country's changed since.
This isn't exactly helping me have any confidence in Biden, because after all, Obama's vice president was.
But yeah.
So I'm just saying, it's like it looks like we're going to have more of the same of what got us Trump, which is what I've been saying constantly. Is that every time we try to meet the Republicans in the middle, they move the middle. It's that Overton window thing. And until we start finding a president. And it has to be the president. It can't just be the Congress or just the president. It has to be the president, too. This is required. Till we have one who's going to move us further left, or at least try to, we're going to keep seeing this cycle of lesser evil, greater evil, lesser evil, greater evil. And the lesser evils now are greater evils of 20 years ago.
That's why I'm for ranked choice voting.
Well, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know how to.
All primary voting should be ranked choice.
How do you get ranked choice voting from people whose livelihoods and careers and, let's face it, appearances on television depend on the two-party system? How do you get them to agree to it?
On the national level, that'll take some time, and it'll take getting more progressives into office.
Right. And that's the thing. Now, the thing is also is that, remember, that happens on a state level. So it can be in the states where it's possible, or, obviously it happened in Maine. So it's not impossible. It's just that people have to go out and support it. That's my my complaint about the primaries is that there were, obviously Bernie was on the ballot. Not enough people came out and supported him. There were some other progressive candidates on the ballot. Some of them got supported, some of them didn't. So ultimately, the people who wanted that need to come out. And so if they don't, they can make all the excuses as to why they didn't, but they didn't. And so that's a problem. So they have to at least take some, at least the people who didn't participate, obviously people who participated did what they could do. The people who didn't participate have to at least take some culpability in the result.
The answer, hang on, Kate. I just want to answer your question from before. I don't think every state does referenda in quite the same way when it comes, but I know when I lived in California, if enough people sign up a petition, you can get something put on a referenda. And if you wanted to get enough people to put on the California state ballot that all state primaries held should have ranked choice voting, and then describe how that would operate, and then people could vote for it or not, you might be able to accomplish it that way without ever having to go through a legislative process and bypass the petition.
California votes on everything. Votes on everything.
Well, and actually, California does jump on primary anyway.
That it'll take time to get all of these things done. Well, what do you say when it's pointed out that we don't have that time, that we are coming up on a point of no return on the environment? If we don't get a Green New Deal and get it now, we're kind of on the fucked side.
Agreed,
what do you do? Can we take that time?
Agreed, right. But it still takes time.
Sure, it still takes time, but that's a recipe for basically passive suicide.
But it still takes time. I mean, all the arguments you make all come down to, but it still takes time.
Oh, okay, here's the thing.
It doesn't matter how much I agree.
It doesn't have to take time. It doesn't have to. If people will get their heads out of their asses, it can take no time at all. It can be done like that.
But that's contingent upon them doing that.
Right.
And them, may I remind you all that them is us.
Let me just respond to that real quick, is that the part of any of this that's malleable is people's minds. That's the only part we can change.
I'll convince people in.
We can't, like the environment is going to go to shit if people don't change their minds. We're going to keep electing horrible people if people don't change their minds. We got to start changing people's minds, and we got to do it right the hell now.
Well, I agree. Changing someone's mind is only a good thing if changing their mind leads to positive action. And the only way to lead someone, if you even succeed in changing their mind, leading them to positive action can only be done by example. In other words, you can have all the best opinions and all the best ideas, but if you don't do anything about it, it doesn't really matter. So when we say people have to do things, that comes down to every single one of us as well. I am absolutely prepared to do whatever I can. But at the moment, right this minute in 2020, the only thing, the most constructive thing I can do is vote and demonstrate. Those are the two things at my disposal right now. But in terms of lifestyle as well, changing the way we live is going to be forced upon all of us by climate change and also by economic necessity. Because look at how many people are out of work right now. The whole culture is about to go through a major shift. And we're not even ready to look that in the face yet. We're not even really talking about what's about to happen in the next 12 months. Because how many people haven't paid their mortgage? How many people haven't paid their rent? How many people haven't got a job? The shit's going to come down like a fucking wall of bricks any time now, you know?
Yeah.
One thing that people need to understand and that it needs to be made clear to a lot of people, because people seem to think climate change is off in the future and that we have all this time and everything's going to be just okie dokie because we're going to invent some incredible thing that'll fix it. What people don't seem to understand is we've already bought a certain amount of damage. Like even like tomorrow, we go full Green New Deal and everything is renewable and we're all running on raindrops and sunshine and no more fossil fuels ever burned again. We're still going to lose a lot of people because of climate change.
Absolutely.
There's still going to be land loss. There's still going to be starvation and water shortages and all kinds. It's still going to happen. We already paid for it. It just didn't get to us yet, but we already paid for it. It's already baked into the equation.
Yeah. Now here's one thing I want to say. So now, and granted, I understand, Kate, you don't trust Joe Biden. I get that. So you don't need to reiterate it after I say I get you don't trust him.
Oh, by the way, I don't trust Joe Biden.
Oh my God, I never heard that before. So okay, so I went to the campaign website because to get a little more of the details. And so again, whether or not he means it, I can't say. All I can say is what he's saying. Biden believes the Green New Deal is a crucial framework for meeting the climate changes we face. So basically, here's where we're at, because we could have got a better candidate, we didn't. So we either have to get Biden in and hold his feet to the fire, protest, march, write call, do everything we can to push our leadership to make sure that he lives up to it, or we get Trump. And I think you know that if we get Trump, it's not going to get better. It's going to get dramatically worse than it already is.
Well, here's okay. Number one, first, this is the first time I've heard Joe Biden even say anything remotely positive about the Green New Deal. But number two, I didn't hear any details in there. What exactly is he planning?
I just wanted to make the point that you said that's one thing you want to see from him. So that that's so I'm saying at least he's saying the words now, and but again, I get that you don't trust him, Kate. I totally get that.
I don't trust any politician who just says the words.
Okay, but at this point, at this stage, Kate, at this stage, words is all we've got because he's not in a position to act those words out. So at this point, he can't offer anything but a promise.
Okay, right. But the thing is, there isn't even really a promise in there. He just says,
there is. Well, he did a big speech the other day and talked about it a little bit. You should watch that speech.
Well, I mean, all right, fine, that's new information. But the thing is, I mean, like I say, it's brand-ass new information. This is the first time I've even heard Joe Biden pay lip service even to a New Deal. And
well, he's even said that as I said earlier, he wants to have a climate justice office in the Department of Justice. Now, I'm not sure I agree with making environmental issues a socio-political issue. I think it should remain an environmental issue. That's one of my complaints about the Green New Deal in general, but he is saying these things.
Right. And like you said, and just say for sake of your argument that he's sincere. Now, that doesn't mean he couldn't waver later. Any politician can. So this is where citizen action comes in, because you're right. We don't have a lot of time to fritter away waiting for things to happen. So I feel one of the reasons why we didn't get, why Obama did what he did, and he didn't attack more to the left, is that part of what we can do is not just elect people into office, but we can continue to remain active. We can call our representatives, we can call our senators, write letters, we can march. And that's one thing. Like, there were a lot of marches against Obama during his term by people from the right wing. I didn't really see. I mean, the only exception, I'll give you one exception, is the
Tea Party.
No, not Tea Party. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm forgetting the words. The people that were protesting the bankers.
Occupy.
Occupy. That was great. That was probably the best. But the thing is, it was kind of like, it wasn't aimed at the administration per se. It was aimed at, like, we don't like banks because banks are robbing everybody. Which, hey, banks are robbing everybody. But if that same kind of action had been directed at members of Congress and at the president, we would have had more results. So it was a good effort, and that's one thing I will say. People, because Kate, you're a Gen Xer, right?
Say what that?
You're a Gen X also, right?
Technically, like date-wise, yes. Culturally, no.
Okay, so the thing is that I know there were people from Gen X that were very critical of Occupy, and they were like, to me in a way it was very unfair because people were like, well, they're asking for this and they're asking that. What are they all about? I'm like, well, no, they're not about just one thing. They have several issues that are, and they're actually recognizing that there's actually multiple issues that need to be addressed. So that was, to me, that was probably the best thing the millennials have ever done was Occupy. And the problem is it didn't turn into political action, other than it was just a kind of an expression of feelings. And if that had been turned into Occupy Congress, it could have actually pushed more action. Although I do think Occupy did open the door for somebody like Bernie to be a candidate in the first place.
I agree with that.
One of the things that I wanted to mention earlier was like the fact that people don't seem able to think in long terms. Like they can't seem to think more than 4 years in the future, if they even think that far in the future. Like I kept talking to a lot of people who would say the number one priority is to get rid of Donald Trump, and it doesn't matter with who. And I actually asked a few people, so if I resurrected Hitler and ran him as a Democrat, you would vote for Hitler? And most of them avoided the question, but one or two actually said yes, they would, which scares me a little. So I mean, the point is that people were not thinking about what happens after Inauguration Day. People weren't saying, okay, what's Joe Biden going to do to or for the country once he's in office? That was never part of people's thinking at all. It was always just Trump fear. And so when you try to talk to people about the environment, where something you do today could have effects 50 years from now, if not more, it's like you're spitting into the wind. They're not hearing you. They're not doing anything about it. It's not being absorbed. So
I think there might be a political dimension to this tactic, though, and I'm not necessarily indirectly meaning to support the whole Biden tactic, but I do think there's a wisdom because there's so much antipathy towards Trump at the moment that from a political standpoint, that's probably the best horse to beat, to get the result that you want, because that's where people are feeling right this minute. I personally, like you, care an awful lot about policies, and I would much rather that all presidential campaigns on both sides talk more about policies and less about this theater. Like Trump is trying to get this culture war started for whatever reason other than fascism, I can't imagine. And Joe is basically coasting in his basement, trying not to make a gaffe bad enough to fuck up his career. I think that's how it is.
Well, the thing is that you kind of took what I said and took it in a different direction, because I wasn't talking about Joe Biden's tactics for his campaign, because this was an issue of what the voters were thinking even before Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee. Right. This is something that people were talking about when we still had people like, say, Mayor Pete and Kamala and Bernie up on stage at the debates. They were still saying, I don't care who it is as long as they beat Trump. That's what people were saying. And I think that's the kind of thinking that is sinking us right now.
Well, I don't know, maybe, but I guess because people, I will agree with you that people generally don't think long term. But as far as me, like I said, Obama was not my first choice. He wasn't my third, fourth, fifth, or sixth choice. So my thing was, I had to, candidate the moment that I wanted. But when I would say that, well, I'll still vote for any of them, is to beat Trump. So it's like, I want this person. I'm going to do everything I can to support that person. And I gave money, and I didn't do any phone banking, but I did, did donate money and some time. So I did what I could. I was unsuccessful, so then I moved on to the next available candidate. So that's
I had 3 candidates I liked, 3, and obviously none of them are the nominee. So it wasn't like I was necessarily Bernie or bust. I was more progressive or bust, right? And obviously that didn't work out. Now, what do you do when neither candidate actually represents you? Like one of them is closer, but none of them are good, like genuinely a net positive in the end. What do you do?
Well, we're back to the lesser of evils.
Well, this,
minimize the harm.
this is my point: is I'm not going to vote for a lesser evil. I'm going to vote for good or not at all.
It's harm
So
reduction. At a certain point, it becomes harm reduction.
And the harm reduction gets lesser and lesser and lesser as that Overton window moves further and further right. When do we start pushing back?
Right, which is why we were talking before about the charter he signed with Bernie.
I think you
just talking
you can't push back as long as Trump is president.
But-
And
but-
the only I agree with Joe earlier that the best way to push back is to give Joe Biden the presidency and then push him like fuck to the left.
But again, that didn't work with Obama. That didn't work.
Nobody
With
pushed
that
Obama.
certainly didn't work
No
with.
one really pushed
Nobody
Obama.
pushed Obama to the left.
Okay, well, but Obama ran on hope and change, and then he was middle of the road status quo guy his whole career. All right, his whole time as president. And
You know what?
I mean, but I mean that's the thing though, is like every time I ask people, when do we start moving it in the other direction? What do we do to start moving it in the other direction? They always change the subject. And I would really prefer it if people would just say, I don't know, rather than try to do spin doctoring to find a way to say, well, it's going to happen kind of, sort of, maybe. But, you know, if you don't know, just fucking say you don't know how to start moving us further left.
A big worry I have with about Biden is that he may end up being just as much of a warmonger as Obama was.
He already is.
That's a big worry of mine.
Biden never met a war in the Middle East he didn't like.
So I guess what I would say, Kate, as far as the window goes, because I agree with you about pushing the window left. I guess my point would be, now I know it's not going to be, no matter what he does, I doubt it would be as far as much to the left as you would want. But I say that compared to where the window is at this moment, that Biden will push the window to the left. How much? I can't say for sure, and no one can. But I know the window will drag further to the right if Trump gets reelected.
Okay, but honestly, it's been moving steadily right since I was born. So clearly, the let's move it just a little bit tactic isn't working. I
didn't say let's move it a little bit. I'm saying that it will move to the left in some direction, and I think based on where we are currently, that we can probably get some decent movement. How much? I cannot guarantee anything. I'm not the candidate.
Paul wants to say something, and then I want to address something.
I have to get this out. For some reason, the left seems to have digested this notion that we have to take baby steps, while the right wing takes giant leaps that would make.
No, now you're putting words in my mouth, Kate. I did nothing about taking.
No. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the left in general. In all the conversations I've had, see, this is me not making it personal the way you tend to make it personal. Okay. In all the conversations I've had, everyone says baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. And I say, you don't see that happening on the right. Why can't we make it big, huge macro changes like they do? And I never get an answer from anybody.
I'll answer you right now, because the left can't win that way.
Why not?
Because the party is too big. It's too fractured. There's too many different segments of the party.
Okay, well.
If you go,
okay, I have to jump in now. I've been very patient, guys. I've been very patient. First of all, Kate, I don't believe in incrementalism either. I think it is totally doable that we can take big, giant steps in a progressive way. If enough people got behind the message and got enough people to join them, it really is a movement. It has to be a movement. The movement got started. The movement got quashed. I actually agree that you can take big steps, and I disagree with great respect that it definitely would be a vote loser. It depends on who's doing it, how it's being done, and the timing of when it's being done. One of my famous Got That Funk quotes, if I may indulge myself, is 95% of everything that happens comes down to timing, and 5% is intention, okay? The right people at the right time doing things for the right reason can make those big steps. I totally believe it. You can't talk me out of it.
I'll give you a quick demographic.
Because of the cynicism, quite frankly, because of the cynicism that is prevalent, you, Rob and Joe, are more right than you're wrong. Because there is a general level of cynicism that defeats that level of optimism that I think is what to carry us through.
I'll give you a quick example of the demographics breakdown. I live in New Jersey, a blue state. By every metric, almost, it's a blue state, right? In the county where I live, where I am currently running for office, I won the primary, by the way, where I'm currently running for office, the demographics work out that it's 2-to-1 Republican. The largest number of voters are unaffiliated. Of that unaffiliated, a large number of those are Tea Partiers.
Right.
So if you run a campaign that is very progressive, you will not win. Even in a state as blue as New Jersey, you have to run middle of the road. You don't have a choice. If you're going to win, you have to run middle of the road.
Right. Now,
Then why do I keep hearing about so many frustrated lefties who are sick and tired of the middle of the road?
And I agree with them. I'm sick of it too, but you can't win if you don't run middle of the road. Now, that doesn't mean govern middle of the road, but it means you run middle of the road.
Right.
With respect, that makes a huge presumption that there's more middle of the roaders than there are people on the far left. That's a huge
It's not a
presumption.
presumption.
And we don't know if it's true or not because there's an awful lot of people who are not affiliated.
We do know that. They know, they have all the numbers.
Well, okay,
I'm
not sure that's true. I'm not sure that's true because there have been times where they've done surveys where they've asked people questions about the issues without making them partisan in any way.
Right.
Without mentioning party, without mentioning left or right wing, anything. Do you care about this? Do you care about that? Do they care about that? And they all say yes. And that's all tallied together. And they're like, well, you ought to be a rabid and screaming lefty based on what you just said. And they went, ew, Democrats. You know, so it's like it's as much branding as it is policy. And that's a problem.
That's true, Kate. The thing is, though, that's true on a national level. Where Rob lives is Trump country. If you drive around his district,
New Jersey.
Where I live in Union County is much more. We are not hard left, but we're like definitely more. We're on the left. We're like left of center. We're not center. You know, we've had. And here's the thing. Now, the Leonard Lance was my representative until the last election. Now, Leonard Lance was a Republican. He was also not a rabid right-wing Trump guy because in my county, a rabid right-wing Reaganite Trumpist could never win. So they run more toward the middle. So the Republicans run more toward the middle because they get their ass handed to them if they try to run to the right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like you can run middle of the road in order to get as many votes from every segment of the left as possible. But then once you're in office, if you win, how you govern doesn't have to match how you run. I mean, that's why you'll have some people that'll run depending on where they're running from.
But quite frankly, isn't that part of the problem? We let people in and then they change directions.
Yeah, but it's the only way you're going to get some progressives in. They have to go in kind of in disguise.
I suppose because I mean, they don't necessarily have to go in disguise. Though. I mean, Rashida Tlaib was fighting some pretty heavy odds, back in 2018, and she managed to get in. She's extremely outspoken, in your face. In
2018.
Yeah, in 2018.
That was part of the blue wave.
Right.
I know, but that all by itself doesn't explain it. You know what I mean?
No, but
doesn't explain it.
Look at AOC. Okay, so AOC beat her challenger, or the incumbent. In a heavy. Well, the thing is, and also it's a heavily blue district. Yeah. So, basically, whatever Republican was going to run against him, I could run there and just go on and cursing at people and probably still win because no one's going to vote for a Republican. But so the thing is that she had the luxury of being able to be openly progressive because she's in a district, and so because and again there it was like, okay, we're tired of the old guy who's doing nothing, let's kick him out and get somebody new. Well, that's what happened. So she was in a district where that could happen, but and not in every district in the country is that possible. So that's the thing, is to basically in those districts where it is possible, run those progressive candidates and put money behind them and get them to win, and understanding that we're not going to get all of them because there's Sussex County.
Okay, I'd like to take this this moment and the lull in the bloodbath to sort of make a specific question to y'all about a specific local race for the Senate. In my opinion, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, metaphorically speaking, are Stephen Miller, Mitch McConnell, Bill Barr, and Donald Trump. All right. Now, Mitch McConnell is facing a tightening race against Amy McGrath for his Senate seat in Kentucky. I mean, there's 22 Republican senators up for re-election in the upcoming election, and if 16 of them flip to Democrats and the other Democrats all held their seats, we'd have a veto-proof majority in the Senate, which would be a way, quite frankly, that we could take the big steps that Kate was talking about. If you've got a veto-proof majority in both houses, you don't even need the presidency anymore. You can pass whatever you want.
Right.
So, you know, but getting back to McGrath and McConnell, I mean, what do you reckon the odds are? Okay, Kentucky, I've never been there. I don't have any like preconceived notions about what Kentucky is really like, other than Sirhan lives there.
Well,
The closest I can get to saying what Kentucky is like is I have an uncle who's from there.
Okay.
well, the thing is right now is that McConnell has been unpopular for a very long time.
But nationally or locally in Kentucky?
Locally in Kentucky.
Okay.
His approval rating has been in the 30s for the last number of years. But basically the problem is that the Democrats really haven't, they kind of assumed they would lose because they usually did. So they basically, it was like sacrificial lamb candidates.
Okay.
This year, there was actually two,
Booker.
Booker and McGrath, that both ran, and McGrath beat out Booker. And basically, I think that it's still going to be a tough fight. I think McGrath has a better shot than Booker would have because ex-military, and that plays well in Kentucky.
Fair enough. Yeah, because I don't really know that much about her other than like her little resume, and I saw like a 30-second thing back in the on Secular Talk. Zoom, did you want to say something?
I mean, there's some things I want to say, but they're not really related to.
Oh, right.
Well, some of it is more related to the some of the comments that I've seen, and also something Boobs said earlier.
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's a free-flowing conversation, bro.
Well, there's this notion that there isn't actually a left wing in this country, and I'm like, well, if you look at footage of the protests, there's most definitely a left wing in this country. There are people that are calling for, they want to dismantle capitalism. There are people that want to get rid of equality of opportunity and replace it with equality of outcome. There's a lot of push. I mean, there are some people in Black Lives Matter that are literally saying, no, we need a revolution. We need communism. And I'm like, holy crap, what are you saying? So there is a left wing. They don't have much power right now, but that's some of what worries me about if Biden is a puppet. You know, if he will start giving in to some of the people that are more extreme because they're so loud and causing so much damage.
I sort of say that I find it interesting that Kate's concern is that Biden won't be anywhere near leftist enough, and Kazuma is afraid that it'll be too leftist.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a danger with Biden being too left. I really don't.
I don't think so either.
But I mean, like, geez, I sort of lost my train of thought. I knew there was something I was going to say about that.
Trump, at the moment, Trump has an advertisement on TV that says that Biden wants to defund the police, which is a straight out lie.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is a lie.
That's not like a misleading statement. It's a lie. You know, is on record, on camera, as saying he doesn't support defunding police, but we need certain reforms and blah blah fluff.
And even if he did support defunding the police, that doesn't mean dismantling police departments. That doesn't mean
and in the advertisement, it basically says that we're going to have Mad Max if Biden is elected. I mean, that's literally what the advertisement looks like.
And we
That's
have that.
part of
And
the
we have
problem,
Mad
though,
Max
with the
now.
left is that there's a serious messaging problem on the left. They can't sell
agreed.
themselves to save their lives. I mean, like, the sheer number of times I've just seen what they've named something, some policy, this, that, or the other. And I'm like, wow, the right wing is going to misconstrue that as badly as possible. I can already see the permutations of ways that they'll just, like, the first time I heard Black Lives Matter, I knew All Lives Matter was coming. I knew it. And then when a bunch of my friends, again, Seattle people, were saying, oh, yeah, the name of Chaz is changing to Chop because Chaz sounds too much like your white friend where you hang out with him in his mom's rec room in the basement or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but chop sounds violent. Chop sounds like you're attacking something, like a karate chop or butcher knife. And sure enough, I forget his name, but one of the politicians was like, oh, see, the left wants to get violent with you. And so, you get people naming things so badly on the left, and I'm like, put me in, coach. I got this one. I can at least tell you how it's going to go wrong, even if I can't make it right.
Well, the right will sometimes name bills doing exactly the opposite of what they do. So both sides have a problem. Yeah.
But that works for them, though.
Yes.
See, that's the thing, though. Like right to work. That's like the most hideous, evil misnomer in history, because it literally means that it's basically taking away your collective bargaining rights and makes it so that you can be fired at will without cause. And it's like, yeah, but they make it sound like, of course, who would vote against the right to work? I have the right to work. Well, so it sounds like they're pro work, but they're not. They're not pro work.
There was one bill they had. It had some funky name where it was like at will employment or something. At will contracts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, and from the sound of it, it sounds like, I mean, the name sounds super benign, but when I hear about the people who are working that way, it sounds awful.
Oh, literally means you can be fired at any second, and now, and even here in Blue, New Jersey, we are an at-will state. So this way, so if somebody's fucking up and you want to fire them, or you just don't like how they dress today, or they don't like look at their face, you can just say. The one exception is if the person can make the case that they're being discriminated against, that's illegal. But other than that, that's the only cause. So age discrimination, gender identities, sexual orientation, race, religion, those are the only things that you're protected on. Anything else, you can say get the fuck out, and they have to get the fuck out.
So I wanted to say real quick to Kazum and to Curis, you can't take the worst elements, the fringe elements of a demographic, and then apply it to the entire demographic.
I have to agree with that.
There are some people that think that Vermin Supreme would make a great president. That doesn't mean that a whole lot of people agree with that. It doesn't make it a movement. It doesn't make it a wing. It doesn't make it anything other than the lunatic fringe. Sure, there are people that go to some of these protests and even the riots, and they're saying stuff like communism and dismantle capitalism. That doesn't make it a position. It doesn't make it a wing. It doesn't make it anything other than that person. So,
I mean, in the case of Black Lives Matter, the founders of Black Lives Matter have admitted that it's a Marxist movement.
Yeah, and hold on. I have to.
It's literally on video.
I beg your indulgence. As far as I'm aware, when someone
oh no, he froze.
Marxist,
Wait.
almost certainly have not studied the works of Karl Marx.
We lost you. We have no idea what you said for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, you froze.
Start over.
Am I back now?
You're back.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What I wanted to say is to everyone that uses the word Marxist in most of internet discussion, it's been my observation and experience, and this includes Curis, by the way. It's been my observation and that most of them have not actually read the works of Karl Marx and or understood them. So Marxist is a simple pejorative word used to someone on the left that they don't like. This whole Marxist thing, I don't know how many people know very much about. I mean, I don't really know very many people who actually know about Marxism. It's just a pejorative word. You know what I mean? That people throw around.
Well, I mean, most of the time,
people don't exactly use fascist the way fascist actually works. It's just that insult. It's kind of like Rule 34. You know or not Rule 34. What am I thinking of? Not Rule 34. Godwin's Law. Thank you. Yes, where anyone you don't like is Hitler. Right. You know, it's that's not how you use those words.
Well, Well, the other thing too, one thing about the people you're talking about, because now I'm sure that those particular people feel that way. The thing is, though, is that it's not an organization like the NAACP who has members and dues and rules. It's a so basically it was a slogan that has turned into a movement, and those particular individuals can think it's a Marxist movement all they want, but I would dare to find that is not most people who would actually be into the movement or actually follow or actually care about protecting Black lives and stopping police violence. Most of them are not Marxist, and again, don't know what Marxism is. Probably have a negative view of what Marxism is in any case. Plus the fact that I think that's kind of funny that if they're saying it's a Marxist movement when they sell merch.
Well, also the last I heard, now maybe it's changed, but the last I heard, I didn't think Black Lives Matter actually had leaders so much.
Exactly.
Like, so if people try to say, oh, the leaders of Black Lives Movement or Black Lives Matter movement have said it's a Marxist movement, well, who though, and who put them in charge?
Yeah.
As far as I know, Black Lives Matter deliberately doesn't want a leader, a figurehead leader, because A, that person would be a target, and B, that way the movement can be a more democratic and collaborative.
Oh, geez, not again.
And there's nothing Marxist about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Right. I just want to say,
have you looked at their mission statements on their website?
I've looked at Project Zero a few years ago, which I agreed with every single item on that Project Zero thing. But I haven't really looked at anything from Black Lives Matter in terms of policy since then. I want to say two things. First of all,
there was something that
we're
was
like an hour and 16 minutes. Huh?
Sorry, there was something I wanted to say about something that was said about 5 minutes ago and just never got the chance.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's the thing about wanting to dismantle capitalism. Like for a while, I thought I was in that camp too, just because I see too many people, rich people, screwing over the working class folks, the regular people. I think what I would rather do is disincentivize acquiring wealth for its own sake, as an end unto itself. That there would have to be some limit on making so much money that it gets to be just a way to keep score with the other people who've made a lot of money.
Right.
Like there has to be some way to make it.
There is.
Like a maximum wage.
Right, but
no, not even that. We did it in the 1950s.
Sentence for crying out loud. If people who are trying to acquire that much wealth at once, all of that, if there was some way to make it more attractive to start giving away their funds somehow, or to take a pay cut or whatever.
We've already done it in 91% top marginal rate.
From the 1950s?
Well, I mean, I remember that after the...
okay, do you just talk over me on purpose?
Well, I'm sorry. I've been waiting to talk about this for ages. It's just like I know that there have been times where the rich were taxed a lot and then it got slowly whittled down. We'd have a depression and then they get taxed a lot, slowly whittled down, depression, same like that cycle. And it seems like we're at the part of the cycle where before much longer we might start taxing them at 90% again, but we're not doing it yet.
Right.
But I would love to find a way to make it attractive to not try to become a bajillionaire just for its own sake.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
fair.
From the 1950s until Reagan was president, the tax rate on the wealthiest Americans was extremely high. And what that did was, not only did it create a lot of tax revenue for the government in order to fund the rest of society, it also made it good for the employers to raise wages, to give benefits, to make a better environment for their workers. And that way they were taxed less.
The problem with that, though, is that taxes is such a word that immediately makes people put their defenses up.
Right, but I mean, but the point is that at the highest, I think it was like a 93%.
Not 91%.
Oh, sure. But the thing is that now if you say taxes to anyone on the right wing, even if they're like the lowliest minimum wage person there ever was, they're going to lose their shit over it.
And
so
again,
it seems to me like that's the wrong way to attack. Is to say
I don't think that you can. I don't think that you can craft policy based on what only stupid people will understand. That's not a way to craft policy.
Well,
we have to create a world for adults who can understand policy. And the thing is,
the idiots are the ones voting. You have to.
I agree that idiots have the vote. But if you say, like Elizabeth Warren, for example, when she was still running for president, was very vocal about the fact that her tax line started at $10 million a year. And you can't be like someone on minimum wage and not understand that that's not going to affect you. If you're on minimum wage, you might never make $10 million.
The problem is you're giving those people way too much credit for being logical. That's the problem. You can say taxes, and we're only going to tax people at $10 million a year. You're still going to have the minimum wage and 3 jobs person going, oh my gosh, because they're so afraid that they might be a millionaire someday and they'll get taxed at that rate. I think that using taxes as a campaign strategy is a bad idea, just because people are going to react to it emotionally rather than logically.
Strategy. We're not talking about
campaign. I kind of am. I mean, well, Sam, I'm working up to a point here, and it seems like everyone's trying to shoehorn something else on top of it that I'm not saying. But my point is that I think if we're going to actually get some sort of real and lasting change, where we don't start seeing the tax rates whittled down over time so that rich people are making too much money, I think we need to come up with a way where, sure, you can still be rich, but not obscenely rich, and it's to your advantage to not be obscenely rich. That making the pursuit of wealth an end unto itself becomes attractive. That's what we need to find a way to do.
Here's a more recent example where we actually did raise taxes and it actually worked. When Bill Clinton ran, and he ran on raising taxes, but when Bill Clinton ran in '92, he ran on the idea that the wealthy are not paying their fair share. It all became about fairness in taxes, that they're making all this money, they're keeping a bigger percentage, and that people in the bottom are suffering. That worked very well. And now he raised taxes to like 42%. And we got a balanced budget, and we had a lot of prosperity for not everybody, but a lot more people than we had. So we had quite a lot of progress. In fact, it was the first balanced budget since the 70s, and even in the 70s, it only happened very briefly. So it did work, and it wasn't even an extreme 91%. It wasn't even, because in the 70s it was 70%. So even at 42%. It was much better. Now, when Bush, and you're right, did it get whittled down? Right. George W. Bush brought it down to 33%. And of course, the prosperity he said promised was going to happen didn't happen, and we had an economic collapse because trickle down doesn't work. So, and that's one way to kind of to build it is to use the examples from history, because there's tons of them, of how trickle down economics, which they continue to try to put foist on us, doesn't work. Every time we try trickle down, it fails miserably. So maybe that's what it is. It's not that you don't run on taxes. It's just that, and I agree with you, Kate, how we package it makes a difference. So you don't package it on we're going to tax. You just pack it on we're going to move away from trickle down, the failed policies of trickle down.
Okay, but you've kind of missed my point, though, which is that sure, we could do that, but we've done that sort of thing in the past, and it still ended up where people started whittling it down again. And I think what we need to do is to find a way to change people's priorities rather than to just try to find a different way to tax people, because obviously taxing people isn't working.
Okay,
so. I mean, what we need to do, we need to find a way to make it so that when people are getting obscenely rich, there's like a stigma to it, or there's some reason why it shouldn't be, or something. Well, that's because when I tried to change the conversation a little bit, we went right back to taxes again.
Let me address, because there's something that's in the chat that kind of relates. Wages have flatlined since 1982. Right? Mm-hmm. That was the same time that the taxes came down on the richest people. So they got more money, were taxed less, and decided not to pay their workers better. It all goes together. It's all one big thing. So
right, so
but here's the thing. Like, you talked a long time, Kate. So let me give me a minute here. So the thing is Yes, it keeps going back to taxes, and you keep saying that's so good because little by little they come down. Well, that goes into voting. You need to vote for people who won't do that.
And as
Well,
far as
obviously, we're not prepared to do that. I
Well,
mean,
Well, it's
people
because we
like,
allow.
because there are
That's
so many
because we
times
allow the
where
richest
like the social issues
because
end
we
up
allow
overriding the financial issues.
That's
Where people will
because
say,
we
"Well,
allow-
sure, I'm going to not
That's
raise your wages,
because-
and sure,
that's
I'm not going to
because-
tax the rich,"
that's
but we have to
because-
get all them like dark people and faggots like to be
Fucking
oppressed.
hey, would you please?
Well,
That's
Well, here-
because we allow the richest people to pay for our congressmen, to buy them. We allow them to bribe them. We allow them to offer them positions for when they lose office. We allow them to use their money as speech. We allow all that stuff. We need to vote for people who are going to stop that.
Well,
So it gives a power.
there's the problem.
And there's a problem, and it
I-
goes
The
right back to
problem is that
voting.
we have to vote for those people, and the electorate has digested this notion that any raise in taxes whatsoever is bad, no matter who it's on, be it the rich or yourself. It doesn't matter. It's bad, and immediately when someone says, "I'm going to raise taxes on the rich," they don't hear the on the rich part. All they hear is raise taxes, and they say, "No, that's a deal breaker."
It's partly because of packaging, like we were saying before. Because when somebody on the left says, we're going to raise taxes on the richest 1%, the right says, they're going to tax you out of your home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, they run on fear. They run on, they feed
That's
it horseshit.
That's why I say we need to take taxes out of the conversation, or find some way to say it without using
right,
the word.
Okay, okay.
What I'm saying is people get triggered by the word taxes, and we need to take that away.
So we still
I understand the point you're making, Kate. I want to take taxes out of the conversation completely and talk about the very real tactic that everyone's talking about here, which is fear. Okay. Because sorry, Joe, you had something you want to say? Go ahead.
Well, I have a question for Kate because I don't want to misconstrue her. I don't want to get her wrong or put words in her mouth or anything. So, if I understood you correctly, so what you're saying is that what we need, beyond taxes, I'm not going to mention taxes, that we need to make a stigma so that people who are rich, there's a stigma against them hoarding all the wealth. Is that correct?
That was just one idea. I was trying to put that out there to see if there were other ideas along similar lines to find some way to disincentivize hoarding wealth.
Okay.
But no one decided to.
Kate, I asked you a simple question. You answered the question. Thank you.
But I have
I'm
a
not
feeling
saying that's the only thing, Kate. It's not a gotcha. It's not a gotcha.
Every time you start making things personal, it starts.
Which is exactly why I want to get off the subject of taxes.
I'm not talking about
okay.
Please let me finish.
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to take the conversation in a different direction for the benefit of everyone. It's all good. It's all good because it's a real topic. The fact is that if fear is being worked from every angle, and it's been going on since September 11th and getting worse and worse and more sophisticated as a tactic in advertising, as a tactic in politics, and quite frankly, between human beings. I mean, the number of people, my woman got flashed with a badge that said something about, like the guy he had a bumper sticker that he flashed her through the window because she's got, anyone else 2020 on her bumper. Right, which isn't even partisan, and so some guy had a bumper sticker in his hand. He didn't even have the guts to put the bumper sticker in his own car to take his own position. He just flashes it in her face like, "Hey, I got you." I mean,
what
this
did
is
What did it say?
I can't remember. It was basically it was a Trump bumper sticker, but I can't remember what it actually said right this second. I just had a puff. Anyway, right? I digress. The point is this guy was such a pussy that he doesn't even have the bumper sticker on his car because he's afraid his affiliation with Trump will get his car keyed probably or some shit like that because here we are in the mountains, right? But whatever, I don't know. The bottom line is people are hostile to each other face to face. We see these videos every day, and it's because they've had their fear whipped up, whether it's fear of racism or fear of job insecurity or fear of COVID-19 or fear of the socialism. Oh my God, the socialisms, fear is a real tactic, and it's been worked, frankly, from every single angle. And I want to discuss, is there any way that we can get back to a place where we talk about issues in a positive way rather than trying to make everyone afraid of what's going to happen if they don't do this or they do this, blah, blah. Fear about the consequences rather than rather than trying to get people to appreciate and look forward to and work towards positive goals rather than run away from the negative shit. That's my go ahead.
There's two. Come on, I've been waiting for a long time, Con.
Go on, Chuck.
So basically, I mean, as you know, can things be done? Yes. It's hard though, because right now, I mean, I think that as much as social media is a useful tool and it certainly can be used for positive things, I think that on balance, I think it's actually probably been worse because, as I said, you know, I think a few weeks ago, I think the idea that, you know, that social media allows us to stay in bubbles is wrong. It's the opposite. We've always been in bubbles. There was always topics we avoided. We kind of talked only certain issues with certain people to avoid problems. You know, the whole thing of don't talk about religion and all that, and don't talk about politics. But because our feelings are constantly bumping into one another all day long. So, I mean, I don't know how many people that I've gamed with for years, 20 years. But because they posted, and not just because they were pro-Trump, but just really egregious, heinous shit. And I just said, ew, these people are fucking bastards. And I cut them out. And I'm sure some people did the same to me. They probably felt the same way about me. So it's hard. I think social media is, it's jet fuel for that. Now, just really quick though, just to talk, and I'm not going to talk about taxes at all. I just want to say, as far as what we can do to kind of get people to change, as far as, you know, how we see wealth, it's going to take education, and it's because as far as putting a stigma on it, and I'm not even against that, because I think there should be a stigma on voting. I'm actually agreeing with you, Kate.
No, you're actually not. That's the problem.
Well, you put it out there as an idea. Wait, you said you put it out there as an idea, and I agree with that.
As one of many ideas. I didn't say that was what I 100% support. I said I want something like that, or something.
And I'm trying to explore that, Kate. I'm actually trying to agree with you, and even now you're trying. I'm saying this is a good thing. I'm thinking, yes, that's a good thing. The idea you put forward, and it's not the only idea in the world, and it's not the only idea in your head, I'm sure, but I think that's a start. However, there's a limit to how much a politician can do, and a lot of that's going to come societally. That we as a populace have to start talking and thinking in a certain way that we build that up. So I'm on your side, at least on that, Kate. So please, Jesus Christ, man, I'm trying to find common ground.
Well, okay, but I'm sorry if I put out an idea as a possible hypothetical, maybe there's something similar that's in a different direction, and then someone comes back with, okay, so I'm right there with you on this thing that you said. I'm like, but it was only an idea. It was the start of a maybe something I might support. I don't know until it's developed.
I liked it. And I like the thing you put out there. Jeez. I mean, I'm sorry I agreed with you. Or I liked your idea. Sorry.
It's just I don't want you to think that I took some hard and fast position that was really just brainstorming. It sounded like it. It sure sounded like it. So maybe you're phrasing yourself weirdly, okay?
Well, maybe you phrase yourself weirdly. Jesus Christ.
Well, okay, but when I try to clarify, you act like I'm throwing a fucking tantrum. And maybe if you'd actually just listen,
you talked for 10 minutes. I didn't get a fucking word in. And
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. You think I talked for 10 minutes? I feel like you just talked for 10 minutes.
I watched the clock.
I really don't think that's true.
Well, the clock didn't lie to me. So
all right. Well, maybe.
Hey, Kazoom, how's it going?
Now, Kazoom, I'm on the Black Lives Matter website. I see nothing here about Marxism.
They don't say Marxism on there, but they do talk about things like
I don't even see anti-capitalism on here.
They do talk about things like they're against how the nuclear family is looked at as the standard.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Well, okay, I know what
it's
thinks is wrong with that.
What it says, we disrupt the Western structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that? That's a beautiful thing.
Well, that's the thing, is I think that's a beautiful thing. You think that's a beautiful thing. I think everyone in this room thinks that's a beautiful thing, but the right wing is their shit because they think it has to be mom, dad, and 2.3 kids.
Well, a lot of people have interpreted it as saying that we should start speaking against and look at negatively the nuclear family.
That's the right wing saying that.
But
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
I claim that's them saying, "Oh, my butt hurt feelings because it challenges my notions of traditions." Traditional notions should be challenged. I mean, Kazum, I know you think that way because you and I share one thing in common. I think people are way too uptight in general about their sexuality and personal expression. I think the world would be a better place if people were just generally more like, "Hey, this is me, take her to leave it." You know what I mean?
That's the one thing you have in common. I thought it was hairstyle and beard.
I know it's good luck. It's good luck.
I think those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
So yeah, I mean, I don't see how that's
Wing does lose their shit about family and sex and all this stuff so much. And I mean, if they're going to be the roadblock, then I suppose maybe they're the people we have to convince. And so like coming out against the nuclear family, even seemingly so, because I know they're not really that way, but perceived that way, could be a real problem with supporting the anti-racism part of Black Lives Matter. You know, like it might be a good idea to not shoehorn in too many points at once there.
Well, I mean, one of the problems with there have been, I think that there is a problem with there being fatherless homes. There has been a push that fathers are not very important in the home, that they're not really that necessary in homes.
who, where? This is like, what? What?
Wait, who is pushing that?
Who's put? That's insane. Who is pushing that?
Which side, at least,
The far left.
is pushing the idea that fathers aren't necessary?
That's
That's the notion of there's a lot of demonization of masculinity in general.
bullshit.
I think that, well, wait a minute. I've heard that one from a lot of people, and I see where they're coming from, actually. But I mean, I do think it's bullshit. I think they're full of shit, but
I
see
have
what
to jump
they're
in
saying,
here.
why they're saying it. So
I think there's a demonization of toxic masculinity.
Yes, but
Sure.
the things that are being deemed as toxic are things like, being assertive or being competitive or having any sense of what's that word? Stoicism is bad. And
Okay, I have to jump in now.
There's a number of things that are being bad.
I'm sorry. I've been married twice and have been present for the birth of both my children, and all of those things are also feminine characteristics. I do not accept them as masculine. I think that there's a stereotype of what that makes masculine or feminine, which is far too narrowly drawn, because we all have degrees of both inside of us. You know what I mean? And
True.
so the whole thing to me is approached from the wrong direction. You know, in the same way that sexuality is approached from the wrong direction. I mean, I'm sure there might be some hardcore, never, totally heterosexual people, but I think there's a spectrum from there all the way to, whatever else on the other end in terms of, kink or whatever, and there's a whole spectrum of different kinds of people along the way. There's a whole spectrum. People don't come in black or white. And that kind of thinking just annoys the hell out of me.
the problem is, though, that there's a lot of people out there who think that way, and they're usually the ones causing the big ruckus. And if we are going to try to pound them over the head with 8,000 different sexuality and gender flags and pronouns and stuff, they're gonna flip out. Like, I know we shouldn't treat them with kid gloves, but at the same time, if we don't, they're going to rebel and rebel hard because they really value that Norman Rockwell stereotype. They value it a lot. And honestly, I say let them have it. The problem is that they don't say that back to us, is like, okay, I don't agree with your lifestyle, but do whatever. That's the real problem, is that if we try to change what they want or what they prefer, it's not going to work any better than them trying to persuade, say, me to be straight. It's just not going to work. The only thing, I think the only thing we can really work toward is getting them to grit their teeth and just keep walking when they see someone whose lifestyle isn't quite what they'd prefer the people around them to be like.
Well,
I think that's the best we can do.
Now, I have to admit, some of the reason why I feel strongly about this is because I don't feel very positively about how my life has turned out, and I feel that I would be a lot more successful of a person had I have had some of those some masculine influences when I was growing up. I didn't have them. My dad died when I was 4.
Right.
So I think very strongly about the subject of fathers and homes, and when I see things that just seem to portray that, oh, well, masculinity isn't very important in a household, and all of these things over here, and they'll list, like I said earlier, competition, assertiveness, stoicism, they'll list those things as being negative. Now, I'm with you, got that funk, that these things can be masculine or feminine, but nevertheless, those things weren't promoted in my life, and I feel it made my life worse by not having some of those attributes.
Okay,
I'd like to speak to this because I grew up. My father was absent, also. Now mine didn't die. He's just philanderer. But the thing is that now in my case, I was raised in my grandparents' house. My mother's parents. So I had my grandmother and my mother's stepfather. So my grandfather that I always talk about was a step grandfather. So now I did have a male role model, but according to the nuclear model, the nuclear model said I was fatherless because my father was absent. Now I still had a male figure, and so the whole point that I see when I look at what they're talking about here about disrupting the nuclear family is that, and talking about the extended family, is that you can get those other influences from people who aren't necessarily your biological parent. And that's been necessary in the Black community because, as somebody else pointed out, due to the drug war, so many Black men were thrown into prison that whether they wanted to be fathers or not, they pretty much were taken out of the equation. And that's the other thing too. I remember seeing a study a couple of years ago where the stereotype is of the absent Black father and all Black children are growing up and there's no man around. Studies showed that that's actually largely bullshit. At least it's not any worse than in white communities. The difference is that there's a lot less. The marriage rate is a lot lower, and there's a lot more of baby mommies and baby daddies. So the fathers were still engaged with their children. They just weren't necessarily living in the same house, or they weren't necessarily married to, the couple wasn't necessarily married, because the marriage rate in the Black community is lower than in the white community. So these children weren't fatherless. It's just their parents just weren't married. But because of this archaic way that we do the statistics, it looked like, oh, we have all these single mothers. Well, they were single by virtue of the fact that they weren't married to the man who was living with them, or that there was shacking, was down the street, would come over.
See, I think one of the problems is how we define, or how we have chosen to define what's masculine. Like my father was home; he was in the house. I mean, he worked, but I didn't grow up fatherless. I very much had a father, but he was not assertive in the masculine type of way they talk about. He wasn't competitive. He's a guy who never even watched sports. Masculine, the way I was taught what masculine is you take care of your family. I mean, he went to work sometimes 6-7 days a week. He walked, what would be an hour drive to work. He would walk it every day because that's what he had to do to put food on the table. That's masculine, not competitiveness, not assertiveness, not macho bullshit. I grew up with zero of that. And I think I'm a better person for it. I think competitiveness can be toxic. I think it can be bad. I think assertiveness can be toxic. And if those are what people are talking about when they say, these masculine traits are bad, well, then just saying simply assertiveness or competitiveness, that's oversimplifying the topic.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking as someone who was raised by a protesting, granola eating, vegetarian, cross country cycling hippie dad, I mean, I didn't see that kind of toxic masculinity at home. I saw it plenty in school, but not at home. But I mean, I see what people are saying when they describe those masculine traits as being bad, because a lot of people do end up getting the short end because of them. But I don't think that the traits are necessarily in and of themselves bad, but rather how they're applied and to the degree to which they're applied, which is more or less what people have been saying. I mean, it's okay to be competitive. It's not okay to be so competitive that you beat someone's ass into the dirt if you lose, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, take that as a metaphor for all of the other traits that we're talking about. Too much and towards the wrong people at the wrong time in the wrong way makes it toxic, but those traits can be positive if done right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm coming from in my approach as well. I mean, no characteristic is in absentia good or bad. It's only what you do with that characteristic that makes it good or bad.
I think for a long time our society has rewarded the toxic types of those traits. They've rewarded it as defined as being man. John Wayne, you know, they've defined it as being that's what a man is, and it's just false. It just isn't accurate.
It's as false
people
as
trying to
John
match
Wayne is a mom.
people trying to match stereotypes that came from movies and such.
Right, exactly.
Oh, that was Kazoom. Oh, your camera's still off. I didn't know who the hell was talking. I thought it was.
Oh,
Paul.
sorry. No, my camera overheated. I hope it's not actually ruined, but we'll see. But yeah, it overheated and turned off. So
I was so confused because I thought I saw Paul's mouth moving and I heard your voice and I was like, what?
Kazoom is a ventriloquist extraordinaire. And I agree with that. I mean, again, my example is like my grandfather. You know, he was reactive, and you know this idea. You know, and so he would go from 0 to 100, you know, in an instant, and he really had nothing in between. Either he was laid back or he was raw, and that certainly wasn't a positive thing to be around. Let me tell you. And my father, you know, I'm getting to know my siblings now, and my father was abusive. So yeah, he you know he was masculine in all the wrong ways. So you know, yeah, it's
I had that. Hey, guys, I want to kind of stop this part of the conversation for a second because
I had one thing I wanted to say.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Although now I'm completely blanked on it because I was going to.
I'm sorry.
No, it's something about like dads and masculinity and fathers, and I don't remember now. Oh well, I'll probably remember later. And
okay, yeah. Okay, well, earlier in the chat, there's something that went on that that comment that was made that I actually wanted to address because this is the kind of thing I hear all the time, and so I'm just going to bring the comment up. It's gone by. Here we go.
I remember it though. Real quick.
Okay, hang on. No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
What is up with those dads who insist on their sons calling them sir?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I've never understood that. That's so bizarre. Anyway, done. Go on.
Yeah, that's a bit weird. I'm glad that never happened to me. Right. So Kentucky says Trump is president and you think he's an idiot. I hear this type of comment all the time, as if achievement can only be done by smart people. And I know plenty of smart people who haven't achieved very much, and I know plenty of people who aren't very smart who've gotten very far. So I don't personally think it's. If Trump is anything, he's shrewd. I would give him shrewd 10 times over.
But not scholarly.
Right. I don't think he's intellectual. I don't think he's ever had an original thought in his life.
And as I understand it, you were to bring us back to the toxic masculinity thing. As I understand it, his dad taught him that winning is the only thing that matters. That you have to win and be seen to have won. And that, when you look at it that way, and then look at what Trump did with COVID-19, where he tried to ignore it at first, so that like if it turned out to not be a problem, it wouldn't have been a problem on his watch, kind of thing. Where really, if he wanted to win, he should have stepped up like a boss and said, "Okay, we're going to handle this." You know, been the disease Superman. That's what he should have done if he wanted to be seen to win. Yeah. But unfortunately, winning the presidency is as much popularity contest as it is a job interview. And that's why Trump is president. As I understand, the right wing tried to throw as much shit against the wall as they could, and Trump was all that stuck.
Right. Now, and that's the thing, too. Now, actually, Quintaga, no one strawman you. No one said that you were saying that Trump was an idiot. You were questioning others who think Trump's an idiot. So we understood you. So the thing is that, yeah, I mean, Trump is not an intellectual. And actually, again, it totally goes to the toxic thing, because to the right wing mind, being tough, winning, and being brash, that a willingness and an ability to punch people, because, just to haul off and hit them. It's just like the people who say, an armed society is a polite society, which is an oxymoron, because what you're basically saying is, well, if everyone's running around armed to the teeth, people won't express a negative opinion about you. So because there's a threat of violence, which of course is the most unpolite thing I could possibly think of. Kate and I argue a lot. I don't think either one of us has designs on shooting the other person. Well, I hope not. so that's something that's actually and that has been kind of focused and concentrated into what's left of the right wing. That this basically all balls, no brains kind of attitude. Like brains are something to ridicule and make fun of, and to actually fear and hate.
Don't even get me started on that. I don't know why nerd was ever an insult. I mean, it's like, okay, so you think it's bad I'm smarter than you? Okay.
The first time I ever heard the word nerd, and if anybody heard it before this, let me know, was during an episode of Happy Days when someone called Potsy a nerd. It was Richie's younger sister called him Dren because he was a nerd. Everyone called him a nerd. I think Happy Days is the first instance I've ever heard that word used. I think they might have made the word up at the time. But then it got taken to mean something else. Like during the 80s, it changed into something else.
Well, at some point, people.
I've had debates with people over the difference between nerd, geek, and dork, and all of those.
Yeah. Well, I went to engineering school. We figured out we actually had 18 different words to describe the level of geek that you were. Just like the whole thing, like the Inuit have so many words for snow because snow is such a big part of their life. Well, we had 18 different words to describe your level of nerddom. According to etymology.com, nerd as a noun,
Dr. Seuss.
1951. An alliteration of the 40s slang nerd, stupid or crazy person. Itself, an alteration of nut. So yeah, turned up in Dr. Seuss from 1950.
Yeah, what I'm looking at on Wikipedia, it says that he had a book called If I Ran the Zoo, and the narrator, Gerald McGrew, claims that he would collect a nurgle, a nerd, and a seersucker too for his imaginary zoo. But it says the slang meaning dates to 1951, like you said.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there you go. I've learned something new today.
Oh, right here. The term was popularized in the 1970s by its heavy use in the sitcom Happy Days. You're totally right there, Paul.
There you go.
Oh, cool.
So the thing basically is it changed in the 90s because people realized, hey, nerds make more money than the average person.
Well, and of course, there's the whole thing where it's like, I usually describe myself as a geek because geek tends to be more pop culture, sci-fi, fantasy, that kind of thing, where nerd is more scholarly, more books, more pocket protectors, more libraries, more chess clubs, that kind of thing. Whereas a dork is just someone you don't want to get away from me.
Well, at school, we had schnoid. Schnoid was like the worst, nerdiest of the nerdy. These are the ones that they're pseudo scholarly. They're they got the pocket protector, and they're the ones who will drone on and on for hours about topics no one cares about.
Hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, schnoid. You wanted to avoid. So then around that time, that commercial "Avoid the Noid" came out. So then we said, "Oh, avoid the schnoid." So yeah, those are the people who are outcasts among outcasts. So here we are, nerdy engineers, and the schnoids. There are about 5 of them at any given time in school, and like they're the outcast to the outcast. Like, man, you guys really suck.
Wow, I only know 1 or 2 from high school. I wish I could remember their names now, but there were a few who qualified, though we didn't have the word for it. Yeah, although one thing we did say, and thinking back on it now, I'm like, okay, can I really use that it was the late 80s, early 90s as an excuse? People in my school were calling each other Riri, which was a sort of like a bastardization of retard. Oh, you Riri, like that. It was kind of like the opposite of tard was Riri. So, and I mean, we never really used it to mean people who were mentally disabled. It was just what you called someone. It was kind of like faggot in a way, where nobody really even knew that meant gay until we were much, much older. But we were calling each other that because it sounded mean.
Can I interrupt so I can address something in the chat?
I was done.
So QNTKKA apparently thinks that Donald Trump is the world leader that has the least amount of power, apparently. Because somehow he thinks Donald Trump can't do anything about COVID. Although other countries have done it. Their leaders have done something about it. But somehow
Countries
Donald
with
Trump...
less resources than us.
I mean, at the very least, he could be pushing on a federal level for people to wear masks. You know, just on a very basic level, he could at least do that. It took until just recently for him to even wear a mask in public that was seen on camera, and it was this major thing. News is going, oh look, he's finally wearing a mask. Yeah, finally. He was acting the whole time like they're not necessary, like they don't do anything or something.
I mean, I guess there's nothing about Trump that says he can't flip-flop or indeed hasn't, but wow, if he all of a sudden says, oh, wait, masks work.
Well, and that goes to the whole toxic thing. He didn't want to wear a mask because he thought he would look stupid. And like, wow, or look weak. How weak do you have to be that you have to worry about what people, if you're worried about what people think about you, or you think you will look weak, then you are weak by worrying about it.
Yeah. Anybody who thinks wearing a mask makes them look less masculine has already confessed they're lacking masculinity.
Right.
I don't think I strawmanned you at all, dude. I really don't, because you implied by your question, the implication is there's nothing that he can do. That's the logical implication that you're making there. So no, it's not a straw man. If you don't want people to think that that's what you're saying, then say something else.
Now, a lot of people have been taking this as like self-deprecating dig at my own looks, and it's not. The fact is, I think I look hot with a mask on. If I pull my hair back in a ponytail, have the 2 strands down here like that, the 2 locks, and then have the mask on, and I give you this look, I look like something out of like a weird virus-based Mad Max post-apocalypse looking thing, and I think it's awesome. So
that's pretty cool.
There was someone that was at Jenny Morgan in one of the other streams I was on was saying, have you noticed how now that everyone's wearing a mask, everyone's gorgeous? It's like we've all got really good eyes, kind of thing. Like maybe this is just me looking for something positive out of the whole COVID thing, but hey, with a mask on, I'm a sexy bitch.
Hey, dummy. Yeah, you did imply that, number one. And number two, suck my ass, asshole.
Something I want to say is, I
want to address the actual thrust of the implication that 140,000 people. That's the number. Okay, that number is today. That's not tomorrow. We already know that it's going to double before New Year's. That's a given. Right? So you're looking at probably 300,000 people by the end of the year. And that is directly a result of the lack of a federal response to this crisis. Every other country in the world has a national unified response. And with the exception of Brazil, every other country in the world has had a better spike graph than ours. Every other country in the world had a peak and brought it down, except for Brazil. And Brazil never had any strategy to combat the virus whatsoever. They overtly decided to let the virus run rampant and let nature take its course and let people become immune. That was their strategy. So the fact that 140,000 people are dead now is a direct result of the fact that Trump started too late. He lied about the virus when we could have been taking precautions. He lied, that the social distancing, when everyone was locked down, it started to plateau off. And then they said, okay, it's been coming down for like 5 days. Let's reopen, even though their own advice was it took 2 weeks of steady calm down before you could even discuss reopening. They didn't even follow their own fucking advice, right? So I've got absolutely no patience for anyone who says, oh, it's not Trump's fault when people are dead. Yes, it fucking is. You can draw a direct goddamn line to Trump and those fucking graves, and he can hit his fucking golf ball off of every goddamn tombstone, because that's how much he thinks about it.
And shit monkey, I'm not rattled. I'm honest. And that's not good for a politician. Honesty is always good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're an asshole. And telling you to go fuck yourself is not me being rattled. It's just me saying, fuck you.
Well, yeah, and that's the
Well,
thing too. 'Cause
Quint-
not only did Trump, that's the thing. Not only did he not have a good response, he actually had a negative response. He was actually throwing water on it, telling people it's a hoax, telling people that they shouldn't do anything. It's fake news, and all that bullshit. Plus the fact, as far as he brought up the fact that he said that Fauci said in the beginning masks were bad. No one never said that masks were bad. What they said in the beginning was they weren't sure if masks would work. And because we were at a shortage, because again, the president made no effort to try to increase the number of masks by invoking, there's a number of acts that he could have invoked to kind of increase the number of masks. Eventually he did. But because there was only so many to go around, and so the medical professionals needed them, they didn't want people hoarding supplies. So they said, well, we're going to be a little wishy-washy for now because we don't really have the supplies. But he could have done something about that too. So fuck you too. Also, from me.
Quinca, a lot of people the professionals didn't know enough about the coronavirus at first to be able to give solid information. So yes, the WHO didn't give the same information in the beginning as they gave later, because we found out more information about those things. This isn't rocket science, Quinca.
Well,
And
also,
let's just put this in perspective for a second here. The Civil War lasted for 4 years, and there were 214,938 combat deaths. Now, in less than a year with COVID, we have 142,000 deaths, just deaths in the United States alone. So, given like the rate at which people are dying right now, it should be a lot scarier to folks than it is, and that's horrible.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. There's still right-wing assholes parroting the same shit Trump said 3 months ago, even though Trump's not even parroting them anymore. And so they're still trying to say, oh, it's no worse than the flu, which is absolute bullshit. In fact, one of the things that really hurts my ass is I keep hearing this number. They're saying, oh, the death rate's 1%. No, in fact, because here's the thing. What they're doing is they're saying, well, there's 3 million cases so far and 140,000 deaths. Well, if you do the math, it actually comes out about 4%. But even worse than that, the fact that, 2%. But the worse than that is the fact that if you look at cleared cases, or those are people who have gotten sick and then they no longer are infected with the virus. So they've had tests to prove they have and to be cleared, you have to get two negatives. So there's only been somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 people who have been cleared of the virus, not counting the ones who died. So when you look at that, cases that are completed either through getting better or dying, the mortality rate is more like 8.5%. So because there are all those other people who are still infected who haven't been cleared yet, we don't know if they're going to die. So you can't even count them when you're doing your mortality rate calculation.
Here's what's really screwed up is, this guy is obviously sea lining. It's just a question. You guys are just going off the rails.
Sea lining. What is that word?
Okay, hold on. Can I just?
What does that word mean?
Sea lining is when somebody engages in discussion like this. It's a kind of trolling where what they do is they ask questions. Like his question was clearly an implication that Trump can't do anything, because he had asked Steve Ashtray, what do you want him to do about it? As if there's nothing that can be done. And then when you call him on it, he says, I'm just asking a question.
Right. Okay. All right.
You know what, though? I gotta say that even if that is what this guy's doing, I don't think it's right to jump on him for it right away. Because what I see happening in this fella's direction is what I often see happening in my direction, is a lot of conclusions are jumped to really fast, questions aren't asked to clarify, and it starts getting really personal really fast. And I think that, honestly, if I was in his position, I'd be really pissed and frustrated at you guys right now, because I don't think you're listening to him. He might be on the wrong side of history, but I don't think you're letting him say what needs to be said
I've been following the chat. I didn't just jump on one thing.
No, I've been following the chat too, but I
And
mean,
this is
but I
that's
mean,
the
if I were
direction
to ask a question, and I genuinely wanted to hear the answer to the question, then people started acting like I was trying to imply a double wide buttload of things from the question. I'd be angry too.
Let me ask you a question. At this stage of COVID,
Hmm.
do you think it's reasonable or rational for anyone in this country to think that there's absolutely nothing the president could have done?
I don't think that it's reasonable or rational. That doesn't mean people aren't going to actually genuinely believe it, though. And if people are going to genuinely believe it,
Then they're worthy. No, then they're worthy of ridicule. Then they're worthy of ridicule at that point.
I don't think that they are. See, that's the problem here.
Then you should shut down. Then you should shut down your channel.
What if you can change? No. What if you can change minds? Is the thing. What if you can take these people who are basically asking these questions, and maybe they genuinely aren't sure. Maybe they've only had one source of information or another, and just ridiculing them without giving them a chance to clarify first, without even giving it like deciding, oh, sorry, one strike and you're out. I don't think that's very fair. I don't think that's very reasonable or rational on your part. I really don't. I mean, yes, I make fun of the people that I respond to on my channel, but I also, I also say very clearly that the person to whom I'm responding is not my actual target. I'm talking to the audience, to anyone who's in the audience watching my video, who says, "Wow, you're making fun of that dude," and I think the same thing. I don't want to be made fun of. What can I?
I'm not referring to video responses. I'm referring to how you call religious people God botherers that you don't want messing with your life. And whether or not I agree with that assessment is irrelevant. It's the same thing that you're saying I'm doing to this guy, you're doing to them.
But he did ask a question, and you did say, oh, that question implies this, that. It's
Right.
like, but can someone not play the devil's advocate just to hear more about what you think?
Well, there are such things as loaded questions too.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like you're ready to go nuclear on someone before you've actually found out what their position is.
Pot kettle.
Pot kettle, yeah.
Please address this question.
Who?
His question right there. So anybody, and I will.
It's on the screen.
Does he lie with the purpose that he wanted to harm people? No, he didn't give a shit whether or not it harmed people, because all he cares about is how he's perceived, is his image, because that's winning for him. He has to win always. That's right.
My assumption my assumption is that Donald Trump purposely lied about COVID harm for his own ends and was completely indifferent about the deaths of American citizens.
Yeah, exactly.
The excuse I heard about, at least one of the lies, there's probably more, the lie about masks and them not working, the story, at least, is that they didn't think they'd have enough masks for the frontline personnel, and so they told everyone else they don't work so that we wouldn't use them, which was such the wrong tactic. But yeah.
If I could say, Joe, I think with respect, you're being a little bit too generous to Trump. I think if you take the aggregate, I honestly believe that, because and Kentucky, if that's how I got to say your name, Kentucky, it is my assumption that Trump actively is trying to kill American citizens. If that sounds conspiratorial and unkind, I offer to you Trump's own words. He told people to inject fucking disinfectant into their veins. That's only one example. He told people the virus was nothing to worry about when people were getting sicker. He told people to reopen before it was safe. He told people to liberate Virginia and Minnesota and
to shine sunlight up their asses.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, Trump vindictively
if you take the aggregate of all the things he said about he says Fauci's wrong sometimes. Give me a break. If you take all the things Trump has said and add them together, every single thing he says equals more dead people. So I think it's reasonable to conclude that he wants more people to die.
Well, see,
I think
the
he
thing
just
is,
doesn't care.
I want to address the one thing you have to about Fauci and the mask. There's a difference between saying we don't think masks will help and saying masks are bad. None of them. Well, the only people saying masks are bad are these idiots who think that you can breathe in your own CO2 and kill yourself, which is fucking stupid. But what the doctors did early, Fauci and others, they were saying that they were unsure of the effectiveness. So there's a difference between saying we don't think it'll be effective in stopping the spread versus saying they're bad, because bad is a negative connotation that would actually harm you. And no one in any official capacity other than maybe Trump said that that masks would actually be harmful to you. So get that straight.
I have to dispute this whole pot kettle nonsense, because someone has to be mean in my direction before I start yelling at them. It's true. Don't give me that look. It's true.
Who? What?
You know? Oh, no, Dev. No, I mean, the thing is, like seriously, I didn't start yelling at anyone until it started getting personal, where it's you think this, you think that, and all that nonsense.
I wasn't talking about the chat. I already gave my example, and you dismiss it. So okay, fine. You dismiss it. It doesn't need to be something that we keep tap dancing on.
I don't know. It's just, all right, well, whatever. I just hate being misconstrued is all. I hate it a lot.
Yeah, I don't like being misrepresented either. But anyway, shall we move on?
Yeah.
By the way, Star Wars is so much better than Star Trek.
Slam dunk. Yeah. Kate, by the way, but before we say anything else, since we're on the subject of Star Wars, Kate, have you watched Clone Wars?
You're going to have to be more specific.
The Clone Wars. There's 7 series of the Clone Wars.
Are we talking about the CGI TV series? Yes.
Have you watched all of them?
No.
Have you got into any of it at all?
Part of the problem is I'm mixing up Clone Wars and Rebels right now because they both looked very similar. So I don't know.
Right. Okay. Well, the Clone Wars has like Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, and that's how it starts out.
Okay, I saw a little bit of it.
Oh, he froze.
Uh-oh.
There I go. Hello. I'm back. Okay. So yeah, the Clone Wars has Anakin's Padawan, and it goes on from there. There's 7 seasons, and I have to say, as a dedicated Star Wars fan since the very beginning, it's the best Star Wars story I've ever seen in my life, especially the end of it. The last 4 episodes, which basically add up to a movie in terms of the length of them, and they all go together.
Spoil it.
It is the best episode of Star Wars I've ever seen. It's amazing.
Well, here's the thing. Now, I kind of break from the norm a little bit with a lot of Star Wars fans. I don't actually care all that much about the Skywalker family spat or even Jedi versus Sith. To me, Star Wars will always be Rebels versus Empire. Like, I could watch nothing but a Rogue Squadron movie or TV show or something with Wedge Antilles as the main character, and I'd be the happiest camper you ever saw without even a lightsaber in sight. I
can dig that.
They need to make
the Clone Wars does things that Star Wars doesn't otherwise do, though. Like some episodes, it'll just be about the stormtroopers and their life, and in some episodes, it'll just be Yoda with maybe some of the other Jedi or some of the stormtroopers, or Anakin and Obi-Wan will go on an adventure, or there'll be a big General Grievous thing, or long drawn out underwater city battles and shit like that. I mean, it's fucking fantastic. The whole thing is great. I can't express how much you need to watch it.
Well, I'll see if I can get my hands on it. Now,
you can get Disney for a week for free, and if you binge watch a season a day, you can do it.
Well, as much as
Torrents.
the Star Wars, I do like Trek too. I think Trek's pretty all right. I'm a little annoyed that Lower Decks or Below Decks, whatever they're calling it, series is going to be number 1 in that ugly Cal Arts style that they do so much. But number 2, that it's a comedy. I've been saying for years that I would love to see like the enlisted personnel. Maybe you have like the security and the medical or science or engineering have a rivalry, or the eggheads don't like the jarheads and all of that. I think that would have been a really interesting show to watch if it had been done seriously. Like they had that one episode of Babylon 5 where it was about those two techs who keep walking around. Yeah, I wanted that Star Trek style. I think that would have been badass, but now they're doing it silly.
You're right.
And I wish they weren't doing it silly.
And that was a great episode too, because it was all from the underbelly. It was not from the perspective of the people leading the battle. It was just from. So I like when they were talking about, they were watching the battle in space, and how the one guy said to the other how when whatever species they were fighting against, well, you could tell when one of theirs blew up because the whatever the gas that they breathed. The fireball would go green for a second and then go out. Whereas if it was red, that it was one of our guys, and then I know the other part was interesting too, because these guys were always like, oh, they don't see what we're doing down here, and then they see all the wounded and all that, and then they realize, oh, there's actually more going on to this than we thought.
Well, they did an episode of Buffy that was almost like that too. It was called The Zeppo, where we're following Xander doing everyone's orders, like their errands and stuff. And then every now and then they'll cut to like Buffy fighting a demon or having this "I can't leave you" thing with Angel, and then like you have Willow casting a spell on. But the whole time you're seeing Xander like catching that stuff on the periphery. It's very similar, but vampires,
I never got into Buffy. I kind of almost wish I did, but I didn't. I was raising two small children at the time as a single parent, and I didn't really have the kind of time because it seemed to be on every night. So, Kentucky just mentioned Babylon 5 rocks, and Deep Ashtray agreed. I know Joe's a big fan of Babylon 5. Kate, you've been getting into Babylon 5 a bit, haven't you?
No, I've loved it since day one.
Oh, right. Fair play. Well, it's always been my favorite TV show. And I'm actually quite glad that when my kids were little, that was kind of one of the main things we watched together as a family from Babylon 5, because it has some seriously good values in it that most TV shows just lack. The value of cooperation, that it's okay that everybody's different, all that kind of shit is right there in your face. And also that sometimes you have to be prepared to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. That's a repeating theme in Babylon 5 that I think sets it apart in a moral sense from most entertainment TV shows, and certainly most science fiction shows on TV, especially Star Trek. It's so removed from Star Trek that I don't even think comparisons are possible.
I will cheerfully sacrifice all of you for the greater good.
Hey, Paul, to your point, Paul, my favorite line in the whole series is actually the last one. It's Ivanova's little soliloquy at the very end, when she said, but most of all, we found that there's room for second chances even for people like us.
Right, and that also goes for Jakar, which I'm going to answer. Kentucky, which is your favorite? The Shadows of the Vorlons. My favorite character on the show has got to be Jakar for exactly the reason Joe just stated, and quite
absolutely. Oh, not again!
It's in and out of a chrysalis, for fuck's sake, and that's a transformation of profound proportions. But yeah, everybody. I mean, what happens to Sheridan? At first, when Sheridan came on the show, I wasn't sure if I was going to like him because he's a little bit too Bill Clinton-y for me at the time, because that's what I was watching on TV. And I'll tell you right now, friends, when Babylon 5 was on TV and I had to wait a fucking week for the next episode, by the time the next episode was like an hour away, I was fucking twitching, waiting for the show to come on like a goddamn junkie. I'm telling you, I was so hyped up. I'm like, shit, here it comes. What's going to happen? I was so invested in the story. Let me just finish. I was so invested in the story. And the last episode aired in the UK on the 1st of January, 1999 at 12 noon. And when it started, there's a voiceover by Garibaldi that says, those of us who lived to see it have seen it all. And from that moment, I started crying, and I cried all the way through the whole goddamn episode. I couldn't help myself. I didn't realize I was so invested in the show. And I got my daughter under this arm. I had a futon. I had my daughter under this arm, and my son's under this arm. And they're like, Dad, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm just like, it's so beautiful. Oh, man, I was far gone. I didn't really realize I was that invested until the end. It was pretty cool.
You should have seen me in the theater while I was watching Serenity when they killed off Wash. Oh my gosh, I nearly shrieked.
I really wanted to watch that. I never got around to it though.
Don't. It's a terrible movie.
And Babylon 5 is definitely a show that's great for binge watching because I mean, first time through I saw it like like weekly like everyone else did, and then that was in repeats, but you kind of jump around because if you don't catch every single episode. But then when I got it on DVD, and I remember Suzanne was out of town, and I was sick that week, so I stayed home all week, and I barely slept, and I binge watched the entire series in
Wow.
5 days. Yeah, I slept like 5 hours the whole week, and I've been watching the entire thing. And because there are so many things that get tied together, and certain things that happen, like it happened early in the series where it shows the follow-on that pops up a season or two or even 3 later, and you might have forgotten about it, but when you're watching it, binge watching, you're like, hey, I just saw that, like yesterday, and it kind of comes up to you. And that's why if it's a series, if you like it the first time, watching it the second time is even better, because now when you're in the early episodes, that stuff that kind of flew under the radar the first time you saw it, then you realize you're like, oh my God, they laid the groundwork for all the stuff later, all the beginning that I hadn't even seen it.
I agree. It's very much got that sort of Lord of the Rings and Dune kind of feel to it. Before you say anything, Kay, hang on just a second. Let me just say one thing. Has everybody seen that episode of The Big Bang where Sheldon goes off on the other guy about Babylon 5?
Oh, yes.
Every single thing he says is true, but still it's totally unfair. Anyway, go ahead.
To what Deep Ashtray said, that Babylon 5 was crammed full of liberals. Now, I don't know if you mean the characters or the actors, but, and it's going to seem like a tangent, I promise I'm coming back with it. My favorite movie of all time is Tron, which has at least 3 actors in it who were eventually on Babylon 5 at one point. And I was very disappointed to discover that Bruce Boxleitner is like a screaming right-winger. I was like, no. And of course, Garibaldi, the dude playing Garibaldi, Jerry Doyle as well. Plus Talia Winters. What the hell is her actress name?
Andrea Thompson.
Yeah. Like on Bruce Boxleitner's IMDb page, there's a quote where he was saying, like, those 3 were the only ones holding back the liberal darkness or something like that. And I was just like, damn it, man. Now I see why they say don't meet your heroes.
Yeah, I mean and that's the thing. There's just so many. I think the even in well, to me it's really Jakar and Londo. Jakar is my favorite character, but of course the two have a an arc, like they kind of go the opposite way. They start out a certain way and they each end up the opposite. And I don't want to, in case because sees it, I don't want to spoil anything, but and I love just the interaction between them, and that to me, that's the story is really their story, and then everything else are events that happen around the two of them.
Whenever I tried watching it, it was always like in the middle of some other season, and it's just like, well, I don't know any of the context for anything that's going on, so it's a show that you have to watch from the beginning to the end. You can't just step into it in the middle, and that's something different. Like Star Trek, you could watch just about any episode at any time, and it's it makes sense.
You can start Babylon 5 on season 2 and not be too lost, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, the thing is that when you watch Babylon 5 from the beginning, you have to remember when it was made and the fact that it was made on a shoestring budget, and it shows, man. It really shows.
Along those lines.
It plots a line, and it has a sort of Doctor Who feel about it in terms of its quality of production value, okay? But the second season, it literally shifts 2 gears and just takes off. And the second season doesn't have a single bad episode, nor does the third season, nor does the fourth season.
The less said about season 5, the better.
Right, because what happened was I have every single magazine of Babylon 5 magazine, so I know all the behind the scenes crap, right? I know, Rob. Relax. But anyway, what happened was they were told they weren't going to get funding for season 5. And so he pulled a whole bunch of plot strands from season 5 into season 4, and that's how they shot the end of season 4, was all about the war against Earth. All that was supposed to be in season 5. And so then was it TBS or whatever picked up on 5? Okay, here's your season 5 money, and they're like, fuck, because they already shot the last episode. The last episode for Babylon 5, even though it does occur at the end of season 5, was shot during the end of season 4. That it was shot to be the end at the end of season 4. That's why they had Ivanova back in it, because they could not have got her back for that. Otherwise, she was pissed the fuck off when she left.
Right.
All right.
Here's something I think you'll love, Paul. I'm on a Facebook group called Space Opera Artists, and there's also a main group called Space Opera. Someone managed to get hold of like not the footage for Babylon 5, but rather the 3D files of the space battles and re-rendered them with today's technology, and it is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. I mean, speaking as an animator myself, I can really appreciate the difference, but it will jump out at anyone who hasn't animated ever. You'll be like, oh my gosh.
I mean, that's one thing that happened with Babylon 5 was they had their own production company for their CGI, so every year got better with their CGI. By the end of season 5, CGI was miles ahead.
Oh, we lost him again.
Play video games with better CGI than Babylon 5.
Well, I think season 1, if I'm not mistaken, season 1 actually used the Amiga computers, and they used something called Video Toaster.
Yes, I got to play with one of those in high school. I actually got to like co-teach a class with the teacher using the Video Toaster and Lightwave 3D.
Yeah, it's well, that's the thing, and they and the other thing too about season 1, there are probably 2, maybe 3 episodes that are kind of like so-so, but even the ones that are so-so, there's usually a few elements within that story related to the
going forward
the arc, so you kind of need to watch them anyway, just so you can pick up those arc elements. And the funny thing is, you won't even notice that they're there until later, or maybe on the second viewing.
So, Joe, what you're saying is I gave up on Babylon 5 way too soon.
Way too soon.
One thing I like about Babylon 5, now I'm sure there's some Trekkies out there who are going to hate me for this, but it feels like when B5 tried to teach us a lesson of some sort or give us a moral quandary to ponder, it was actually something that didn't insult my intelligence. But like I've been binge rewatching TNG while I work on my animation stuff, and let's face it, during a pandemic. And it seems like every time, say, like Data would have some like bit of human interaction that he didn't know, and he would naively ask someone to explain it. And I'm just sitting there going, everyone in the audience already understands all this crap. Or they give us some like philosophical conundrum where I'm like, I solved that shit when I was 7. Come on, challenge me. Babylon 5, on the other hand, did challenge a lot of my notions a lot better than Trek ever managed.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
I want to say just really quickly, has anybody seen a comment from Phoenix Rider go by at all tonight?
No.
Okay, yeah, it's really unusual. Anyway, please carry on. I was
done.
Well, no, I was saying the big thing is the fact that he had the overall story before they did anything. Now they did make changes as people came and left the show, but in generally speaking, he had everything all planned out and mapped out. Whereas in a lot of cases with Star Trek, there's like, well, what are we doing this season? I don't know, And
Star Trek was.
Plus the fact that when there was permanence in Babylon 5, so if something broke off, if there broke off on the thing, it's still gone the next week. Like how about the episode where Ivanova her ankle gets broken, and the beginning of the next episode she's still limping around on a cane. Whereas I saw a really good deconstruction of Voyager. And Voyager, they went to this major battle, all this scoring on the hull, and then the next week it's all gone.
That's actually not the best example, because Claudia Christian was genuinely actually wounded, but still, you're right conceptually that if someone like got killed off or lost a limb or something, like Jakar's eye stayed blue after it was like poked out and they gave him a prosthetic, that kind of thing. So yeah. And actually, JMS was pretty clever where, you're talking about how characters change from time to time. He said many times he gave all of the characters escape hatches. Like he planned for the possibility of actors having to leave or something.
Yeah. He literally wrote the book on how to write screenplays for film and television. He wrote a textbook that they use in colleges to teach screenwriting classes. He knows everything there is to know about narrative structure as for writing for entertainment. He also was really big in comic books. I kind of wish Nathan was here for this because, I mean, J. Michael Straczynski wrote some of the Spider-Man comic books as well, and I think his own comic book called Rising Force, where he was the author, and then obviously he had illustrators doing the visuals for it. So yeah, he's been in the whole sci-fi game for a long, long time. He also used to write Murder, She Wrote. Did you know that? That was J. Michael Straczynski.
No, although he also did write for a lot of cartoon shows. For example, Jason the Wheeled Warriors. Or not a cartoon show, but he wrote for, I want to say Captain Power, and definitely for Spiral Zone, which most people don't know.
Yeah, I heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
I can't believe they showed that show to kids, frankly. But I don't know. There's this conversation going on in the chat about the most underrated sci-fi. Ooh, that's a toughie.
Well, I think Babylon 5 will be high in that because, you know, it has its cadre of hardcore fans, but the general populace doesn't really know Babylon 5.
Babylon 5 is a geek thing for sure. Every geek I know loves Babylon 5.
Columbia, stop complaining. You.
Rob, do you even like sci-fi, Rob? Yeah. What's your favorite?
Star Trek.
Which iteration?
Yeah.
Actually, I love all of them. I even like Enterprise. I know a lot of people don't. I loved Enterprise.
Oh, I think Enterprise is great.
I haven't got around to watching Enterprise.
Oh yeah, I thought Enterprise was fantastic.
The only
I do not like the J.J. Abrams version of Star Trek. Not a fan at all.
Well, I have to say that J.J. Abrams' Star Trek is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen.
It's funny you should say that because J.J. Abrams, when he took the original Star Trek, what they call that, the Kelvin timeline. Yeah. When he took that on, he thought he said at the time he would never be able to direct a Star Wars movie, so he'll make a Star Trek movie as if it was like a Star Wars movie. He actually said that, and then later on they gave him the Star Wars movies, which I think is pretty ironic because maybe he would have done Star Trek differently if it was trying to be Star Trek-ish, but he wanted to make it Star Wars-ish on purpose.
Well, that's why I never wanted to let him anywhere near Babylon 5 because to my mind he did bad Star Trek, he did bad Star Wars. I don't want.
But hey, you made it go away again. That's me wearing an Enterprise jacket. Well, it's a jacket, not the full suit, but yeah. So you want to talk about liking Enterprise? I like Enterprise a little.
Yeah, just a bit.
Uh-oh.
Hey.
Uh-oh.
That was weird.
The buttons changed. Sorry.
No, I mean, yeah, a lot of Trekkies hated Enterprise. I loved it. I didn't like. They had the whole timeline with the
Xindi and the Time War.
Xindi. Thank you. I didn't
I don't like that either.
But the rest of it, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, I love the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's nice to give like bones to everything else that came after. You know what I mean? It laid like some foundations and gave everything else some bones, and I thought that was really cool. Yeah, the Xindi part that was disappointing, but
one criticism that bugged me, and because again I like the first 3 seasons, there were people that were saying, oh well, you know, everything looks so outdated even compared to today and everything. Like, yeah, it does, but the thing is that you can't make the show that's supposed to happen, you know, 150 years before the main show look more advanced than the original show looked. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I think they went wrong with Discovery.
Yes.
It's very, very high tech compared to the original series, and it's like supposed to be taking place about 30 years before.
I saw the first half episode that they offered for free and said, no, this isn't the Trek I grew up on. No.
It actually gets better, I guess, like Babylon 5, I guess. It gets better as it goes on. They kind of tweaked it, I think, because of fan response. By the most recent stuff, it feels more like Star Trek than the first few episodes. But
yeah, I only watched the first episode.
The redesign on the Klingons was weird.
Yeah, I wasn't happy with that.
I wish they would just settle on something.
Yeah, right. I wish they would settle on something. Exactly. I mean, I thought they did settle on something because the same Klingons that were in the movies, like from 3 onwards, on the the Star Trek 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, are the ones that were on Next Generation.
Right.
Same heads and everything like that, and then they were the same ones on Deep Space Nine and the same ones on Voyager, and then what?
Well,
They're
that's
not.
the problem with Hollywood. They fix things that aren't broken.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, now is that so basically you had the Kelvin timeline Klingons, and now the Discovery ones are still different yet again.
Yeah.
So you literally have 2 Star Trek properties that are simultaneous with different Klingons.
Different Klingons. One thing about the Kelvin timeline in the movies that I think was a win was Chris Pine as Kirk.
Yeah, right.
Chris Pine doing anything would be a win now. I mean, you know.
See, I think the better one was and I just lost his name. The guy who played McCoy.
Oh yeah, what is his name?
Oh, yeah.
Is he also
What's his face on Vengeance?
Yeah, because
Although Simon Pegg as Scotty was brilliant, though.
he was good too. So the thing is, for me, where they were, J.J. Abrams ruined, the whole Kelvin timeline was destroyed for me when, by basically getting rid of, destroying Vulcan and having Spock be not Spock. I'm like, the thing that drove me to Star Trek way back when I was a kid was, growing up as a mixed race kid in the early 70s. And so here you had Spock, who was mixed race, and having to deal with a society where he didn't fit in with Vulcans, he didn't fit in with humans, except on that ship. And I identified with that character. And then once you take that away, that's what made him interesting. You take that away, he's just some dude.
Well, there were a couple of things I would love to see on Trek sometime. Granted, they're probably going to sound silly when I describe them, but I'd like to see them treated seriously. I'd like to see a captain who's like an Italian from Brooklyn, who's like, hey, we're going the warp speed over here, huh? That kind of guy. like cast Andrew Dice Clay or something. Or I would like to see a complete nerd bag, like Jason Alexander as the captain of a starship. Or, that kind of thing.
Well,
hell, mix them together, cast Joe Pesci as the captain.
Have you watched The Orville, and do you like it if you've seen it?
Oh, I adore the crap out of The Orville. I love it so much.
Because when you said that, made me think of The Orville is a lot more like what you're talking about. There's people talk like normal and.
They're supposed. I've seen some clips of a new cartoon. I think it's made by the people who do. Now I can't remember the Pickle Rick. What's that show called? It's Rick and Morty. I think it's made by the same people who do Rick and Morty.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new Star Trek cartoon coming out. Have you seen clips of that yet?
About the lower decks. It's that style you're talking about, that Cal Art style that's fucking everywhere. I'm so sick of it. I hate it so much. Just saying.
Yeah, it's not my favorite art style, but I mean, I don't know, I'll watch it and see if it's any good. I've only seen the first episode of Discovery though, so I'm going to give it a chance. I figure I want to at least give it a season to see if I like it. Because these seasons, it's only like 8 episodes, 10 episodes or something like that, 12 episodes maybe.
I tried Rick and Morty, and I couldn't get into it. In fact, the very first episode pissed me off like you wouldn't believe. And it wasn't for anything like actually about the characters or the setting or anything. It's just in the first episode, they apparently had this challenge where they wanted to see how many times they could say Morty in a single episode. And I think it came out to like 96. And by the end of the episode, I was like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I don't want to hear that anymore. I mean, like maybe if they'd saved that for episode 7, I might be into the show. But they did it on the first episode, and I was like, no, nothing to do with this.
I've watched like I don't know 4 or 5 Rick and Mortys, and I've loved every single one of them. But ever since then, every time I see it on my Netflix, I'm just never in the mood to watch it anymore. So I don't know what that means because I really loved it, but I'm just like not right now. I don't know.
And for all I know, it's the best show in the entire Western universe. For all I know,
the Green Machine is correct. By the way, Discovery's second season is better than the first.
It was Carl Urban was the guy who played McCoy. He also played Éomer in Lord of the Rings.
I haven't seen those since they were in the theater. I don't remember.
Yeah, he I thought he did a really good job. But I don't know. I guess if I like Discovery enough, I'll give it season 2. But
Well, Deep Ashtray just said, that the Borg was by far my least favorite element to Star Trek. Just bar none, my least favorite. I don't know why they kept pushing them over and over again. Oh no, not another Borg episode.
Well, the problem there's a lot of problems with the Borg. I mean, sorry, the Xindi and Enterprise I think were way worse than the Borg. But yes, the Borg were a problem. And when they first showed up, it was like, oh, we've never encountered them before. But then all the other Treks that came after had to find a way to incorporate the Borg, and it was just like, well, you just made a complete liar out of the first time they showed up. I mean,
I don't know. It's like, are you sure you meant Eowyn? Because that seems to be a chick.
Eomer.
Eomer. Okay, thank you. Also, which one were the guys that you're talking about in the? What am I thinking here?
Abrams verse.
The Xindi or whatever. Which
Xindi.
ones were
they were the. It was a. They were a civilization made up of like 5 different species. There was 5 dominant species. There was
okay.
The lizards and.
See, I was picturing the guys with the weird, fucked up hair thing going on, but I think that was Voyager. But honestly, like, I'm okay with the Borg. The ones I can't stand are the Ferengi. Now, granted, I am binge watching TNG, and I realize that the Ferengi aren't nearly as bad as they are in DS9. But in DS9, they're just these like slapstick caricatures, and I hate them. Like, seriously, cannot stand the Ferengi.
See, I actually thought
the Ferengi are not logically consistent. There couldn't be a society that functioned according to the way the Ferengi say their society functions. A society couldn't function according to those rules.
I just meant the individual characters were really annoying. I mean, like their voices and how stupid they were. I mean, like they came off like a bad cartoon show sidekick.
See, I feel the opposite. I loved Quark. I loved Nog. I didn't like I didn't like Rom as much, but I think that and Quark has some great moments. Like the House of Quark to me is a great episode, because he kind of exposes some the soft belly of the Klingons and how they're not quite so honorable as they make themselves out to be, and the other thing was like there's one great scene in one of the episodes where Quark takes Cisco to task and basically says, you're always ordering us around, you're treating us like garbage. Why? Because humans are like us. And like, you used to be more like us way back. You were very greedy and so business oriented. But you were worse because you had slavery. You had concentration camps. Even at our worst, we were never like that. And so we're not you. We're better than you. And I thought that was great.
Okay, I'm blanking. What was the name of the guys that were like the revolutionary terrorists that were fighting the Cardassians? Maquis, thank you. God, that was driving me nuts.
Trek is really good at like very overtly painting a picture of humanity as being simultaneously the best thing ever and the worst thing ever. It's a thread that runs through all of the series. One of the few things that they've managed to keep consistent. And they're talking about Q pulled the Borg, or Q set up the meeting between the Enterprise and the Borg in order to test the Federation. And that was supposedly the first time that they ever met. And you go like 20 years thinking that that's the first encounter, that the Borg only knew about humanity because of Q, and damn him because he caused all these problems. But if you watch Enterprise, which took place hundreds of years before, they found a Borg ship on Earth. So there was like a whole 3 or 4 episodes or something like that was dedicated to the Borg. And it was just like, well, they just said 20 years ago on.
Yeah, when something breaks canon like that, it's hard to forgive, especially for geeks who have been really invested in the whole series, or series is.
Series is yeah. No, that to me, like I said, I mean, the board were. I wasn't a huge fan of the board, but I could deal with them. There's India I hated more than anything. But yeah, when they broke canon like that, it is hard to forgive.
Oh yeah, and that's why I know some people don't care about canon. And look, obviously there are some people who go way overboard. Like the thing on the lapel should be at 35 degrees, not 36. But so people can get crazy with it. But here's the thing though about it is that any story should be consistent. Like Kate and I were chatting on Facebook about she was saying she gets tired of people that are get too crazy about oh, that's not how science works, and she's like, hey, it's sci-fi. So, and my thing is like, whatever you do, it's fine as long as you're internally consistent. And so that, to me, that's the part that matters, is that internal consistency. And I don't care about the little things, but the big things, like, yeah, if you say you can't go over warp 7 today, then tomorrow they better not go warp 7.1 unless you have an explanation for it. Like, hey, we got a new drive and now it goes warp 7.1. Okay, fair enough. But you can't tell me this is a hard and fast rule or and then just break it without an explanation. And
one of the beautiful things about Star Trek is that because of the fact that it's all fake anyway, they can literally do that with one line of dialogue. They put the thing on the shoulder and say, "This will protect you from this facial distortion," and you can walk into another dimension.
That's one of the reasons I keep saying that it's entertainment, not a TED Talk.
Right.
Like you'll get the people who say they prefer Star Trek because it's realistic. I'm like, really? You got friggin' psychics and empaths going on. There's clearly magic because it's obviously not technology. You get Q, who's a godlike being, and it's not even hinted that he's doing it through tech. And yet you say it's more scientific and realistic, and that's the basis of its appeal. I don't bloody think so.
Yeah, that's a good point about the Q. Oh, I just want to say something about breaking canon, and I'm sorry, Kate, I don't mean to do any spoilers, but the whole thing about the 7, 8, and 9 of Star Wars, right? They take so much liberty with pre-established things in the Force. Like, for example, in Episode 9, they talk psychically across space, and we're talking about light years of space, right? Now, you could argue that it's been pre-established because in Empire Strikes Back, when they're flying in the Millennium Falcon across next to the ship that Darth Vader's on, he's like, Luke, and he's like, Father, And so we've established that you can communicate telepathically without even being able to see each other across space. Now, is it wrong of me to think that the actual distance matters?
Yes and no.
If you're really powerful with the Force, I guess the whole galaxy is just like one spot to you, right?
I think there'd have to be signal degradation, but they are always talking about feeling vibrations or tremors in the Force.
Sorry. I want to interrupt real quick to talk to somebody in the chat real quick. I just, Deep Ashtray, the Borg Queen was hot. Do you know what? The Borg Queen, she reminds me of Shayra. She does. I don't know why. There's something about her that reminds me of Shayra. And you can tell her I said that too.
I haven't seen Shayra in so long, like in person. We're Facebook friends, but
I didn't want to derail the conversation. I just had to get that before it was gone. Sorry.
That's fine.
There was something. Oh, right. Oh, by the way, Paul, if you want to talk shit about Disney Star Wars, go ahead.
Fair play. Thank you.
I hate that. So anyway.
Because they took so many liberties. It's not just the talking across space. If you'll just give me a second as well. It's the other things they did, the little tiny things that they did, which I don't know. The last episode, I quite find it entertaining from a visual arts perspective. It's an entertaining thing to watch. It's visually pleasing to me, and I like the characters and good things happen to them. But if I care about the overall arc of Star Wars, It's an abomination. It's just so wrong. The like the Emperor at the end reaching up to the sky and shooting down all the ships with his blue lightning. I mean, come on, Luke could take that shit on the fucking second Death Star just fine all by himself.
God, this sounds so stupid.
The guy with his hands and shoot down 1,000 spaceships at the same time. Come on.
Well,
So stupid.
Well, here's the other thing.
Like I'm glad I didn't try to watch that shit. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
he could do that. He could have knocked out the rebellion years ago.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, the thing is, what I always do is that because and it's always a balancing act. Anytime you do a sequel or you do a reboot or whatever, because on the one hand, there has to be some artistic license for the people, the filmmakers, whatever, to create something that's not a complete rehash. But on the other hand, if you diverge too much, that's a problem too, because when you put that label and you say this is Star Wars, Star Trek, Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, whatever, you are trading on people's nostalgia. You're saying, hey, if you liked that before that other one, you're going to like this, and you should come because you liked everything before that, and it's related to that. So if you go and you totally piss on whatever came before, you've cheated the people. And again, now you can say, look, we're going to make something for a new audience. I think the better thing then is to make have a new name, because otherwise, because again, you're trying to trick people. You're basically saying, well, we're going to do something else, but because we know we'll have more cachet by naming it after something people like, we'll just make whatever fucking thing we want and we'll call it that, and we'll trick people into the seats. And that's
don't even get me started on fucking Tron Legacy. That was not Tron.
Agreed.
And Solo. I mean, that's the idea. These are different stories. Yes, they're connected, but it isn't what you love and what you remember. It's connected to that, though.
Well,
and that's a lot more honest.
The thing is, though, I mean, maybe this is going to be, I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but Rogue One was utter trash. It was shallow. I didn't care about any of the characters to the point where I don't remember anyone's names. Like the best fiction, for at least in my never humble opinion, is fiction that makes me give a crap about the characters. Like in 5 minutes, we learn more about Luke Skywalker than in A New Hope than we do about the characters in Rogue One through the entire runtime. In 5 minutes, in 2 conversations, we learn about Luke's hopes, his fears, his family, all kinds of stuff. And like his skills at repair and all of these things. We learn so much about the guy. And then we have a whole movie to get to know even more about him. And we get attached to him and his interactions with Han Solo. Compared to that,
Hollywood in general
was like watching someone else play a video game.
I agree with you. Hollywood in general has traded that away, though.
Yeah.
They've traded that away for more action and more speed and more flashy lights and lens flare. You need lens flare.
Oh God.
Yeah. Well, and this has made its way into movies that shouldn't even be actiony, too.
Right. Well, that's the problem, and that's one of the problems with the Abrams verse is that Star Trek was a sci-fi show that had action often, but not always, but it had action in it. But they tried to turn Star Trek into an action series. Star Trek was not an action series; it was an adventure series that had some action.
Although I have to say, having binge watched TNG. They boldly go so infrequently. Almost everything they do seems to be politics or interpersonal things going on the ship or something. Like, I can't even remember. I'm on season 5. I can't remember the last time they beamed down to an alien planet to investigate like ruins or to say hi to a previously undiscovered alien race. They're just like not doing that anymore. Oh, look, we're delivering Lwaxana Troy to another conference with a delegate she's going to fall in love with. Ooh. It's just like I really wish that they would explore more.
Yeah, same. I think that's what Voyager tried to do. I mean, I don't know if anybody here saw the Amazing Atheist do his exploration of Voyager. I thought it was actually quite fair. And to my surprise, actually, but what he said, I totally agree with at the beginning, which is if you take the premise of Voyager, the idea that the ship's been flung by some super high-tech 75,000 light years across, and you've made the conscious decision not to settle, but to go home, and all the different things that could possibly happen, especially when you get closer to the center of the galaxy, the star density is denser, and therefore there's going to be more aliens. There's so many possibilities. And yet throughout almost the entire season, with the exception of the Year of Hell, the ship's in great shape the whole way through. You know, every once in a while they run low on this or that, and it sparks a little adventure, whatever. But at the end of the day, those people would be psychologically scarred. On Babylon 5, people are changed by the end of it, and they don't go through anything like the kind of shit that the crew of Voyager goes. The crew of Voyager must be the best repair crew in the galaxy. You know what I mean? Go ahead, Kate.
I mean, okay, Trek ships do seem to stay in pretty decent repair as long as like nobody's tried to bounce torpedoes off their hull, and they have replicators and all that stuff. So I at least can make excuses for why that ship is still in decent shape. But what really, for me, was the appeal of Voyager, and I think it might be my favorite Trek series, was Tom Paris. Because he was the first everyman I've ever seen on Trek. Like everyone else, they're all, ooh, I love Mozart and Shakespeare, and I drink sherry, and I read like you know, all this. And I'm like, okay, Tom Paris, I could see listening to 80s butt rock. I love the Captain Proton thing he does in the holodeck. I was like, finally, someone who comes off like a real person instead of a caricature of some ivory tower mortarboard wearing
and he has an arc. He has a character arc where he evolves. I mean, he started at the beginning of the series. He was kind of an asshole.
Well, he was a convict.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so that was actually really good. Trek didn't do enough of that either.
Yeah. Voyager lost me early though, because there was that episode Phage where they run into that species that's kind of like intergalactic lepers. You know, they have some sort of disease, degenerative disease, and they're
transporting people's organs.
Yeah, and so they steal Neelix's lungs, and so then they chase the aliens who stole Neelix's lungs to their planet, and they catch him and they're like, "Give Neelix's lungs back." They're like, "Well, we gave him to Bob." Yeah, we gave him to Bob. You're like, "Well, give him back." Well, if we do that, Bob would die. And then Jane was like, "Oh, well, we can't do that." I'm like, Kirk would have taken him out with a fucking spoon. Were you kidding me?
Well, the prime directive,
any captain that would allow that to happen to their crew
toxic masculinity again.
Any person who allowed that to happen to their crew person would be there would be a mutiny.
No, I mean, yeah, the prime directives seem to get in the way all the time. Like, oh, look, an easy solution, but we can't do it because ethics. But there were a couple of things I wanted to address that were going on in the chat. Because Deep Ashtray mentioned Jupiter Ascending. Now, I really wanted to like that movie. I really did. And I think had it been a TV show, a series, it might have been way better. Because watching it, you could tell there's all this backstory behind it. But in a 2-hour runtime, we never get to see it. So that was kind of frustrating, actually, because it seemed to have a lot of sort of like Dune-esque potential for me. But also, fuck Luc Besson. Dude can make like music videos because he's all style over substance. He's not a narrative storyteller. I'm sorry. Fifth Element was garbage. It was shallow, and it was all like, oh look how like
I hate it.
And edgy and beautiful all of this stuff is. But I'm sorry, it had no real story, and the characters were pathetic. They were paper cutouts. It's not a good movie. It's not a well-told story.
I loved The Fifth Element. I enjoyed that. I thought all so many of the characters were so over the top, especially like Ruby Roo or whatever his name was, and every character was memorable. It's I don't know.
But I never got invested in any of them. That was the problem. Is like, sure, they were memorable, but they weren't well fleshed out people, and so I didn't care.
Yeah, it was fun. Fifth Element was fun. But they had no depth to it.
That was the problem.
Yeah. So it's okay to enjoy it. I mean, it wasn't like it was like completely useless. It was fun.
But the way people are like this about it all the time, I'm like, because I encounter so many people who are just, oh, Fifth Element, humana. I'm like, really? It wasn't that good. It wasn't.
I gave it a 6.
And I was never into it.
But Luc Besson is so, I mean, like, I've never seen a movie of his I've liked, ever. So.
I don't generally pay attention to who the filmmakers are, so I really couldn't even tell you, generally speaking, who
Hmm.
made
Well,
What do you all think of
that guy.
what do you all think of Red Dwarf?
oh, well, okay. It was great right up until they introduced the new Kachansky, and at that point, I was like, oh, no.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Red Dwarf has good seasons and bad seasons. The actors, I think, took the characters as far as they could, and then it just got a little bit sort of circular,
And you know what gets stuck in my head on a near constant basis? He's Arnold Rimmer. That one with the Rimmer Experience, where they're trying to convince Lister that he likes Rimmer, and they do that demonic puppet show. You know the one I'm talking about?
I think I do, but I can picture by
the song for that gets jammed in my head like you wouldn't believe. It's so frustrating. But anyway, I'll just be over.
Anytime you get a song stuck in your head and you get it out, all you have to do is do this. Scaramouche, Scaramouche, will you do the fandango?
It doesn't work for me.
Lightning, Sunday, frightening me, Galileo, Galileo.
Has anyone on the panel
Anything. It gets rid of anything.
Have any of you guys watched The Expanse?
No, I have not.
It was mentioned in the chat. I've seen it mentioned a few times before. People saying, "Oh, it's so good, it's so good." I've never seen it.
I keep mixing it up with Dark Matter, but I know I've seen both. And The Expanse, honestly, it could be good. The problem is it's very impersonal. Like I watch the characters, and when they're not grimdark, they're dull. And I don't dig on that. It's the same reason I stopped watching The Witcher. It's just like
I didn't like The Witcher.
I can't picture any of those characters having a good time, cracking a smile, joking around, being real people. They're always just so grim all the time. And that's why I didn't like the new Battlestar Galactica either.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, The Witcher, I couldn't get through the first episode. I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah, Battlestar Galactica was so dark that I actually hated the characters, and I was like looking forward to them dying. And I'm like, that's not good, right?
That's the problem with the first half of season 1 of Discovery, by the way. It's very easy to hate everybody on the show. I was really appalled by it, because I was like, this is the most negative Star Trek I have ever seen. But they do fix it. It gets better.
And the thing is, you can have dark, but even there, like, to me, it's funny, even though I have a tendency toward depression and everything, but deep down, there's a part of me that's an optimist. And so, like, I like the idea, even if it's just a ray of hope. So even in Babylon 5 at its darkest, there was always a ray of hope. There was a possibility that maybe we can fix it. If we get over our shit and figure this out, we can fix it. But when it's just all dark, it's why I hated the movie Fury. Like I love military movies, and especially like where they're getting into the tanks and all that. And by the end, like halfway through that movie, I was looking forward to all the crew dying. And when as members of the crew died, I was like, good, fuck that guy. And that's not a good movie if you actually have general animosity toward the characters. It's one thing to say, the love to hate kind of thing, like, oh, Darth Vader, the evil villain. No, these are just irredeemable people that you wanted to die.
See, that's why I couldn't get through Seinfeld, actually, which is weird because I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and those people are even worse. But they're worse in a kind of ironic way, where in Seinfeld, I guess they were just complete assholes.
Well, no reason in Philadelphia, because they're so over the top and ridiculous. That's why.
I saw Moon. It was okay. That is the one with the dude from Galaxy Quest, right? Where he's all alone. Yes.
M-O-O.
I've never seen it.
I've not seen it.
Uh-huh.
The Stand.
Yes, Rob caught it.
Well, I mean,
that spells Moon.
like you want to talk about like I'm okay with dark situations as long as the characters aren't dark. Right. Like, I mean, hell, watch Buffy. The world comes really close to ending multiple times, but the characters manage to stay a little bit upbeat.
Right. And I can even deal with some dark characters, but when everybody's dark, like even I remember like in the original Battlestar Galactica, like Colonel Ty was somebody like you could look up to, you know. He was like the conscience of the fleet, you know. And this one was an alcoholic and he's all sorts of things like, oh, come on. You know, I didn't have a problem with the gender swapping or any of that stuff for the most part, but you know, just like, you know, like the other thing too, they missed like Starbuck was not brooding. Starbuck was, okay, boomer. Starbuck was. He was like a jaunty kind. He was the knight errant. He was a good guy, heart of gold. Sometimes he got it wrong, but he was a good guy deep down. He always trying to do the right thing. Whereas the new Starbuck was just like, you know, just cynical and. Ugh.
And I have to, I mean, because you brought up earlier about you're making these movies and TV shows out of established properties, and so you're playing with people's nostalgia. And like, I gotta say, when they race or gender flip a character, I'm pissed off. In the same way I was pissed off when they started making Superman's uniform duller and duller colors, and I was like, that's not my Superman. You know, like I know it's superficial, but I grew up on this stuff. I'm invested in this stuff, and I want more of what I liked, not what I liked, but different. You know,
I kind of liked Superman's new look.
Ugh. Well, you can have it. I want more of the Superman. I want more Christopher Reeve style Superman. Thank you.
I mean, I don't mind the aesthetic. What I didn't like is like, okay, in the first time we saw Superman fight Zod, Superman cared about the people. So he said, oh, I'm going to fight them outside the city so we don't destroy the damn city. This Superman didn't give a fuck. So he's supposed to be here protecting us and defending us. He doesn't give a fuck about us. He's just, you know, he's fighting his war. We're incidental.
Like the Dark Knight trilogy. Have you ever noticed just how much collateral damage there is to Gotham?
Right.
Oh, big time. Well, and that's something I like. At least they addressed in the Marvel stuff. You know, when you had Age of Ultron, after Age of Ultron, when you had Civil War, it was like, hey, you guys are breaking shit all over the place, and we think we got to put a lid on that. You know,
Spider-Man, they went even further, and they had you know, the Vulture. He was one of the cleanup guys that had to clean up the mess that was left from the battle. So it was just like they actually, you know, things didn't just magically get better again. They actually built into the stories. There's actual, you know, people that have to clean up the mess and complain about it.
And that's why Vulture was one of the best villains that they've had in the MCU because he was totally relatable. Because basically he's a guy that got screwed over, and he wasn't really even nefarious. He was looking out for his people. He wasn't sitting there cackling and evil and all this kind of crap. He was just a guy like, hey, the rich guys got over and powerful got over on us, and we want to take a little bit of that back.
He was a fantastic villain. Yeah. He was. Yeah.
And even to the point where once he figures out that Peter is Spider-Man, he kind of still like, all right, well, you saved my daughter, so I'm going to let you get away with it this time, but don't fuck around because I'll kill you.
Sorry, I've been hearing like cars honking and people cheering outside my window all damn day. I'm suddenly realizing it's Pride Parade. They're actually doing the goddamn Pride Parade. To like in the middle of a pandemic, they're doing the parade. I'm not ever going outside ever again, am I? I mean, obviously I love Pride and everything, but all those people are committing suicide by virus, and I want nothing to do with it. Oh well.
It's really hard. I since I've been back in the United States, I go in and I see how people have been behaving here, how much different it was to what I left behind. But I know Britain's now been opening up, and I missed that because I've been here. But it doesn't seem like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like everybody ever really locked down here ever, really. Or did that.
Not really.
I mean, I was pretty good about it. I lived in suburban London. I stayed in my room pretty much most of the time for like 20 hours a day sometimes, just because I don't want to be downstairs where my roommate has guests and stuff and all this. I tried to take it really seriously. I went out.
Not again.
Mask, everything like that, And I try to take it seriously because for me, it's not just about not wanting to get sick. It's not wanting to get anyone else sick, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. One of my employees, she's on vacation and she's actually like gone away, and I'm just like, what the hell you do? I mean, it's her time to take. She can do whatever she wants, but I'm just like, that's not smart, you know. And you know, I mean, granted, she's a Trumper, so you know, whatever. But
well, I mean, what really blows me away is how this whole thing has been allowed to become a political issue in the United States when, if anything should be nonpartisan, it's saving people's lives.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, here's the thing that gets me, Paul, is like, okay, the right wing was perfectly fine with all the restrictions from the Patriot Act because terrorism and the president, we're gonna let the president do extra constitutional things because you know we're scared of terrorists. And here's an actual threat. So more people have died of COVID in the last 4 months than terrorists have ever died from in the history of the planet. But yet, you know, wearing a mask is such a huge imposition, you know?
Well, the problem is that the virus isn't something that you can see with the naked eye. It's not something you can fight. I mean, if we were to like miniaturize all of the NRA nuts on the right wing and give them guns that they can shoot the virus, like miniaturize them, put them in someone's body, like Inner Space or Fantastic Voyage, I think they would be a lot happier about it. But because it's invisible, because there's nothing you can do about it short of playing defense, I think that's part of it. But part of it is also because they're so cult-like with regard to Trump. And when he said don't wear masks, it became for them like a mandate, like a divine mandate. I mean, like how many people think that Trump is the second coming or whatever. I mean, like, I know that it would be too hyperbolic to say that the problems we're seeing are all coming from the right wing, but you got to admit they're not exactly helping. I think they're much worse than the left wing, at least as far as COVID is concerned.
Well, just look what's happening in Georgia right now. The fucking governor is suing the mayor of Atlanta because she had a mask mandate. I mean, fuck.
Well, and Trump says he'll like defund states whose governors defy his wishes. What?
Since when do we live in an autocracy? I mean, it's a dictatorship like that. That is literally dictation. I'm dictating what you have to do, people, and if you don't do it, I will withhold your own money from you.
Well, think about this, Paul. This is coming from the right wing that are supposedly all about states' rights. Yeah, suddenly states' rights are inconvenient.
Yeah, well, it does seem like
has been exposed by COVID.
Yeah.
It does seem like their goals are not malleable, but what they're willing to say is or isn't okay is definitely malleable. Absolutely. And like, I mean, I guess I can kind of understand that, even though I don't respect it.
Yeah, like Betsy DeVos on the other day on the interview, I think it was last Sunday on one of the Sunday talk shows, they said the interviewer says, "Is it safe for schools to open?" And Betsy DeVos goes, well, what we know is schools have to reopen. And she's like, yeah, safe. And then she didn't answer the question because you can't answer that question in the affirmative. You can't say, yes, it's safe to open schools. Schools are not designed for social distancing. The whole point of the reason that they say is kids need to be back at school because they need to socialize. Well, yeah, but you can't socialize and social distance. You can't play a ball game properly.
They're not even doing that. I mean, they're not hiding why they want schools to open. I mean, they've said it. Their parents have to get back to work. So they're saying that teachers are babysitters. It's their job to watch kids so their parents can work. So what they're saying is your children are expendable because we need you to fuel the economy.
I agree with that, but I have a more insidious take, if I may. I'm sorry. I have a more insidious take than that because Betsy DeVos doesn't like education in the first place. They would like to privatize education, these people. And this COVID-19 offers them a very unique possibility because people who can afford not to send their kids to school are going to be smart enough not to send their kids to school because they're going to be incubator tubes for the virus, right? People who can't afford not to send their kids to school because they do have to work will. And guess who those people are? We've already seen that happening in this society at the moment with the racial disparities that happen with the way COVID spreads through to society. So they're going to be getting a twofer. The people they want to keep safe are going to get safe, and the people that they want to get rid of, they're going to get rid of. All right. I think this is insidious as fuck. I think they're taking advantage of this. I know I'm a conspiracy theorist, Joe, and I apologize. And
No,
two people have.
I'm
I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to stop talking and let one of you start.
I just have a very quick clarifying question. Was Betsy DeVos the one who actually said, and I saw this as a quote, that we can't let the science get in the way of opening school?
That was Trump's press secretary that said it.
Kayleigh McEnany
I
said
don't
that.
remember these names as well as I remember movie
right.
directors. Sorry.
So the thing is, what gets me, and I think actually, Paul, I'm actually not going to disagree with you particularly on that point. Basically, I think it's really more about Trump's reelection because they know if the economy doesn't get better, that Trump has pretty much no chance to get reelected. But again, they're more than happy to use people's children as the fuel to fuel his campaign. But I want to address something that Quintaka said the virus is real, but the data is conflicting and confusing. It's not conflicting and confusing. What's conflicting and confusing is that the leadership of this country, meaning in Washington, coming out of the right wing, the president and his enablers in the House and Senate, they are purposely putting things out to confuse the issue because they don't want people to stay home. They want them to get back to work, and because they're desperate for re-election, and that's all it is. This idea that the data is confusing is horseshit. It's a lie.
Yeah.
But the thing is that they don't care. Like they have a place they want to get to, and they don't seem to care how they get there as long as it's not a certain way. As long as it's not people wear masks, people social distance, they will take any other path to achieving the goal. And
because the dear leader said it, and so now it becomes the word of God, and so they cannot contradict the dear leader because that's how it works in cults and it works in dictatorial states. So once he said, "Oh, no masks," like then it became political. It wasn't political until then. I watched a good video from Bo of the Fifth Column, and he made the point. It was about when before the government actually got involved, and the scientists and the doctors were all saying, protect yourself, stay home. People, even in the right wing, people were doing that. And then as soon as it became, anyone from government saying, hey, you need to stay home, their ultra right paranoia crap kicked in, and then now it's all about resisting government. Especially liberal government, because of course, where did it hit worse here in New York and New Jersey area, and in California, where it's more liberals, right? So, but it's at one point, Kate's point a while ago about that she understands where they're coming from, even though she doesn't respect it. And I agree. The thing is that they're not even consistent about that, though, and because they at least if they were consistent, I would kind of get it more. Basically comes down to they want to win and they'll say anything. The problem, what makes their hypocrisy worse, because it's not like there's no hypocrisy in the left, but their hypocrisy is worse because they run, and that's their platform, is we are the moral people, and the left wing is immoral and doesn't have any values, and they run as the values people. So once you set yourself up as the values person now, and then you go against that's a bigger level of hypocrisy.
Well, when you really dissect it, though, when they say, like, we're the moral people and they're the immoral people, they might as well just say, we're the normal people and they're weirdos. Because that's really what it comes down to, is just that not being the, like, cis-het white Christian is just so alien to them, and they can't accept even just living around those people, much less being one of them themselves. That's the real problem.
Well, like J.K. Rowling, when she was her ridiculous anti-trans rant a couple weeks ago, the way she talked it was really bizarre. She basically seemed to have this attitude that if we accept trans people as they identify themselves, that somehow that cis people no longer have their own identity, which is of course horseshit. No one's telling cis people they're not cis people. No one's telling me I'm not a man because I accept a trans man or accept a trans woman. I mean, that's fucking ludicrous. It's that's like mentally unstable to think that, but that's how they act. Like, well, if we get them to accept that trans people are real thing, that somehow that means the rest of us don't get to identify the way we want, which is stupid.
Well, they have the same arguments about gay marriage, didn't they? That it'll destroy the family. Like, really, you think that if someone is attracted to the opposite sex and wants to, like, get married and have kids, they won't because other people aren't? How like sheep-like are you people?
Well, my favorite is if you make it allowed, then everyone will do it. And like, you know what? Gay marriage has been allowed now for 7-8 years, whatever it is. I have not once had a desire to have sex with a man. Not once.
Well, it's like Matt Hollywood saying that all homosexuals are pedophiles. I'm like, I've really fucked 0 kids my entire life. Not one. Goose egg, you know? Oh, and I hate that I have to make 0 like this instead of this, but...
Yeah.
Okay, stop fighting, you two.
Hey, folks, it's been past 3 hours. We're getting close to our limit on the live chat, so I think I should wrap the conversation up. I wanted to thank everybody in the chat for being so participatory this time. That even includes the people that don't like me very much. You know who you are. Right. Anyway, and obviously thanks to all my co-hosts here for being our hardcore with these jamborees. I really appreciate it. Kazoo, my friend, your presence should be more frequent because it's always good to have you here.
And I like presents.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean that to everybody, but y'all, the rest of y'all are more like my hardcore. But I've been trying to drag this guy's butt in here for some time, and I think AOD shamed him into coming into the room. So yeah. Anyway, again, thanks to everybody. Peace and joy to y'all, and I'm going to end the broadcast now. We'll see you next week on the Breakfast Club.
Bye.
Have fun.